Chapter 709. Then let me try it myself. Saying such a sentence, Lancer smiled from the bottom of his heart and slowly raised the red spear in his hand. A layer of crimson magic power suddenly began to surge violently on the spear body, causing the surface of the spear body to surge with crimson flames that gradually rose up. Looking at Lancer, who was holding a spear covered in scarlet flames, and feeling the power rising from Lancer's body, a solemn expression slowly surfaced on Noah's face. Just by feeling the magic and power of Lancer, Noah knew that this servant, who was a great hero in his previous life, was definitely not easy to deal with. At least, he couldn't use his authority, and could only use his enhanced magic to deal with Lancer. Even Noah himself felt that if he fought against Lancer, the outcome would be very suspenseful. After summoning Ryder yesterday, Noah originally planned to find time to compare notes with Ryder today, to see how much he could fight against a servant without using his authority. Now it seems that he didn't need to do it himself, but he could also see the strength of these servants. At that moment, Noah didn't hesitate to take a step back. Almost at the same time, a fog emerged in front of Noah. Holding a short sword that was connected to a chain in his hand, Ryder appeared from the fog. He raised his head slightly and looked directly at Lancer with his blindfolded eyes. Traces of magic began to flow out from his eyes. Finally, the magic surged onto the chain of the short sword, causing the tip of the sword to flash with a cold light. A short sword connected to a chain? Lancer raised his eyebrows. It seems that you're not archer or caster, and you don't look like Saber, and you don't have a bit of arrogance, so you can't be berserker. The most important thing is that I have already fought berserker, so you're either rider or assassin, right? Just like the meaning of the words, each servant has its own characteristics. Saber's weapon is undoubtedly a sword. Lancer's weapon is undoubtedly a spear. Archer's weapon is undoubtedly a bow, which has the ability to attack from a distance. The characteristic of a rider was that it was driven by a famous mount. Caster, magician, can use magic that is beyond the reach of humans in this era. Assassin is good at hiding in the dark and making a surprise attack. Berserker is a berserker who has no sense at all. Therefore, as long as they meet face to face, they can probably judge the servant's rank, just like how Noah recognized Lancer at a glance. Well, no matter what, let me see your strength first. Lancer's palm slowly rubbed on the spear, and when the magical power on the spear became more and more turbulent, Lancer suddenly shouted. In the next moment, Lancer's figure disappeared from the canopy. Ryder, who was holding the chain dagger, reacted in an instant and raised the weapon in his hand. At this moment, Lancer's figure flashed in front of Ryder. The spear in his hand slightly trembled, and a few bright red spear danced in the air. Shio dash! The tip of the crimson spear transformed into a bright red shadow. It was cunningly and viciously stabbing towards Ryder's neck, aiming straight for his throat. That speed was simply like lightning. In the face of Lancer's fast attack, Ryder's figure retreated, and it was as if he disappeared in an instant. At the same time, Lancer pulled up a smirk, stepped on the ground, and disappeared in a loud sound. In the blink of an eye, Ryder and Lancer disappeared. Of course, the two servants didn't really disappear, but because their speed was too fast, the eyes couldn't follow. Noah couldn't help but be surprised. He quickly concentrated on his sensing ability, and finally caught the battle in front of him. Ding ding dang dang. In front of him, there was a burst of sparks and continuous crisp sound of collision. Both servants were displaying extreme speed that ordinary people couldn't match. Even the eyes couldn't follow the amazing speed of the battle. Shio dash! In that world of extreme speed, the red spear tore through the obstacles in the air, and with a sharp sound, it pierced out like lightning. Ding! The chain sword was also waved at the same speed, blocking the lightning-like spear, causing a crisp sound. Good speed! Lancer raised the corner of his mouth and shouted loudly. How about this? After that, Lancer's palm suddenly hit the tip of the spear in his hand, and the spear in his hand turned into a bright red arrow, shooting toward Ryder's neck. Looking at the tip of the spear shooting towards him, Ryder just blindly retreated. His feet stepped on the ground, creating a crisp sound. His body was like a stream of light as he shot backwards. Seeing Ryder's speed increase, Lancer also let out a low shout. His toes tapped on the ground, and his body was like a leaf in the wind, quickly flashing toward Ryder. Lancer's relentless pursuit caused Ryder to suddenly stop in his tracks. His body spun in the air, and the chain dagger in his hand rotated half a circle. After fully leveraging the momentum of the dagger, it was mixed with an incomparably sharp chi as it pierced towards Lancer. The sharp force coming from the front caused the long spear in Lancer's hand to suddenly turn. With a low roar, the tip of the long spear was instantly wrapped by a faint airflow, causing the surrounding air to appear as though it was being torn apart. After a slight pause, it carried a piercing sound as it heavily struck the chain-short sword. Ding! A loud sound of metal colliding rang in the air. It has to be said that the gap between Lancer and Ryder was indeed very big. Originally, Ryder was not the type that was outstanding in close combat. His real strength was in the use of his mounts, skills, and noble phantoms. On the contrary, as one of the 3 knights, Lancer's close combat was one of the strongest among all the servants. Under such circumstances, with a crisp sound, Lancer directly hit the chain sword in Ryder's hand. The sharp sword suddenly flew to the sky. After losing his weapon, Ryder's face could not help but slightly change. This made Lancer smile. The spear in his hand shook, and the sharp sound of the spear breaking through the air rang again. The red tip of the spear turned into a red lightning, tearing the air, and went straight for Ryder's neck. In the distance, Noah, who saw this scene with his own eyes, narrowed his eyes, and magic slightly emerged from his body. However, just when Noah was about to make a move, he caught a glimpse of a scene that made Noah's figure stop. Chi! He saw that the chain sword that was just hit by Lancer suddenly flew back, with a sharp edge, and stabbed Lancer's defenseless back. Lancer, who was about to give Ryder a fatal blow, narrowed his eyes, and then he finally found out. In Ryder's hand, one of the chains was pulled by him, creating a clear sound of collision. Like a dancing whip, it caused the short sword connected to the chain to spin around and explosively shoot back. The sudden sharp attack from behind made Lancer no longer care about attacking. The magic in his body surged, and the surface of his body was covered with a layer of bright red gauze, making Lancer's blue bodysuit a little bit of a bright red color. In an instant, Lancer only had time to prepare so much. When Lancer used a lot of magic to strengthen his body's defense, the short sword that was shot toward Lancer was like a silver light, fiercely falling on Lancer's back. Dang! A crisp sound rang out in the air. Chapter 710. Dang! A loud sound was heard. Lancer's body seemed to have been hit by something heavy. After rolling on the ground, he turned over and knelt on the ground with one knee on the ground. There was a trace of blood at the corner of his mouth. Feeling the sharp pain from his back, Lancer raised his head and looked at Ryder, who was holding the chain dagger again. The veins on his temples were popping out. This kind of strength, you must have used some kind of monstrous strength skill, right? Lancer guessed correctly. Ryder had indeed used his monstrous strength skill at the last moment to send Lancer flying. Lancer suddenly laughed when he saw Ryder's silent agreement. I thought you wouldn't be too difficult to deal with since you're not Saber. I've underestimated you. However, since you're able to fight me to this extent, I can confirm that you're not an assassin who only knows how to hide and play tricks. You're Ryder, right? Hearing this, Ryder continued to ignore Lancer. He was still as silent as ever. On the other hand, Noah took the opportunity to see Lancer's ability value. Job level, Lancer Master. Real name? Attribute, Order, Mean ability value, Strength, B durability, C agility, A magic power, Cluck, Irelic, B job level skill, Magic power, C can nullify magic spells caused by chance below 2 stanzas. Can't defend against magic spells and ritual incantations above 2 stanzas. Preservation skill, Battle continuation. Even in a desperate battle, they could still display astonishing tenacity and tenacity. They would not die easily in battle. As long as they did not suffer fatal injuries, they would be able to survive. Even if they were on the verge of death, they would still be able to move and fight. Reset stance, See the ability to leave the battlefield in a battle. It can return the battle to the beginning in an unfavorable situation and return the condition of the skill to the initial value. Rune. Rune B has the ability to use Rune, magic. It can be used in various situations. It can also upgrade a B-level ability value to A level in a very short period of time. Protection from arrows. B as long as the sniper was within sight, no matter what kind of weapon was thrown at him, he would be able to catch it with his naked eye and respond accordingly. As long as it was a throw-type attack, he would be able to dodge it even if it was a relic. However, it was not suitable for long-distance direct attacks, nor was it suitable for large-scale attacks. Even if he was unable to see the target with his eyes, he would be able to deal with most of the flying weapons. Divinity. B. The higher the level, the more material the blood of the gods was mixed with. Level B was already considered to have a relatively high level of divinity, and the relationship and bloodline with the gods were quite strong. Should I say as expected of Lancer? Among the 7 servants, Saber was generally considered to be the strongest. This was because, in order to become a Saber, one had to be a heroic spirit with the highest level of ability points other than mana points. It was said to be one of the most demanding ability points among all the job ranks. Lancer was second only to Saber. Not to mention that all ability points must be excellent, dexterity must be particularly high, and it must be good at using the range of shooting and speed to escape. Therefore, those who could become Lancer were generally heroic spirits who were born as knights. Indeed, Lancer's dexterity was already at the highest level of level A. No wonder he could catch up with Ryder, who was also at level A in dexterity, and even seemed to have an advantage in terms of instantaneous speed. After learning about Lancer's ability points, Noah was surprised that he could see Lancer's skills. It was not a big deal to see the skills of the job ranks, but the skills were also one of the trump cards of the servants. How could Noah not be surprised that he could see it directly? What Noah didn't know was that it was only possible because of the superimposed assistance of his sensing ability and the overly vast magic power. For the average master, being able to see the servant's ability points and job ranks was the limit. However, even so, Noah could not see Lancer's noble phantasm. Obviously, the noble phantasm was the real trump card of the servants, and even Noah could not see it. At this time, Lancer stood up and pointed the red spear in his hand at Ryder, who had been silent. It seems that I need to show some of my real skills. After saying such a sentence, Lancer's eyes surged with red light, and the spear in his hand fiercely shook. A trace of mana was wrapped around the spear, and with a roaring sound, Lancer's figure burst toward Ryder's direction. This time, Lancer's speed increased by another level. Noah did not make a mistake in his judgment. In terms of instantaneous speed, Lancer was above Ryder. Ding! The chain dagger with the same trace of mana fiercely crossed the space and collided with the roaring red spear, causing sparks to fly in all directions. When the two collided, Ryder, who was at a disadvantage in close combat, was shocked and took a few steps back. Even the strength was a lot higher than before. It's not over yet. Lancer laughed, and his figure moved, leaving behind an afterimage. When he appeared again, he was already not far in front of Ryder. The spear in his hand danced, and the red light danced in the air. He was cunningly and ruthlessly greeting Ryder's body. Chi. A trace of the spear appeared in the air, and like raindrops, it stabbed Ryder's body. At this moment, Ryder's figure seemed to be blurred, and with a speed that was not inferior to Lancer's, he dodged Lancer's sharp spear one by one, which made the red light in Lancer's eyes more intense, and the spear swept out like lightning, stabbing toward Ryder. Clang! Just when the red spear was about to hit Ryder, Ryder used the chain that was connected to the dagger in his hand, and forcibly wrapped it around Lancer's spear, and the spear was stopped. Obviously, Ryder used the monstrous strength skill again. However, at this moment, Lancer's aura suddenly soared, and the veins on his temples bulged. A majestic magic power condensed on the spear, and like a surging flame, it moved around, and with a fierce shake, it shook Ryder's chain back. Lancer's sudden attack caused Ryder to frown slightly. With a flick of his hand, the chain in his hand narrowly deflected the tip of Lancer's spear, causing the sharp tip of the spear to stop less than 5 centimeters away from his eyes. It looked extremely dangerous. Soon after, Ryder's figure flashed slightly as he nimbly retreated a dozen steps. This caused the malevolence in Lancer's eyes to become even denser. A moment later, he finally let out a sinister smile. With a tremble of his body, he once again disappeared into thin air. At the same time, Ryder's feet suddenly moved half a step to the left. Just as Ryder's feet moved horizontally, the space behind him suddenly trembled. A crimson spear pierced through like lightning, brushing past Ryder's shoulder as it flew past. If Ryder hadn't moved half a step, the spear wouldn't have brushed past Ryder's shoulder, but instead, it would have pierced Ryder's head. However, even so, that crimson-red spear suddenly trembled. Abruptly bending into a strange arc, it fiercely bounced towards Ryder's head. Swish! Ryder's expression didn't change, and he tilted his head back, and the spear flew past his face. Immediately after, Ryder's body spun in the air at high speed like a top, and he kicked out a powerful whip kick, which fiercely hit the side. With a kick, Lancer's figure flashed and appeared there. On the other hand, Ryder was forced to take a few steps back due to the recoil from Lancer's sudden appearance. Chapter 7:11. Whoosh! A strong wind blew from above, hitting the spot where Ryder and Lancer were fighting, stirring up a cloud of dust. Noah, who was watching the battle from afar, had his coat fluttering in the wind. However, he had been staring at the battle in front of him. He did not move his eyes away even for a second. Over there, Ryder, who was wielding a chain dagger, and Lancer, who was wielding a crimson spear, were facing off against each other. One of them was still expressionless. His eyes were covered by an eye patch, so no one could see his expression clearly. The other one was more or less speechless. I've basically given my all, but I can only gain the upper hand in the battle with Ryder, who is not good at close combat. This guy, where did you come from? Hearing Lancer's words, Ryder raised his chin slightly and finally spoke for the first time since the battle started. That's only because I have an exceedingly excellent master. The strength of a servant that descended with the identity of a servant was generally dependent on the master's own magic. Although there were other factors, the master's ability was also a factor that could not be ignored. As a rider, it was natural that Medusa would not be able to compete with Lancer, who was an excellent knight in close combat. Even so, in Ryder's ability value, the values of strength and durability were B-level. In addition, with the help of Noah's unusually vast magic, Ryder did not need to worry about the problem of magic at all. He could use skills and noble relics at will. With the monster strength skill, of course, he would not be too much weaker than Lancer. In other words, although Ryder was destined to not be good at close combat, because of Noah, he had a great advantage in terms of ability value. He could fight with all his might. In the battle with Lancer, he was only at a disadvantage. It was indeed all thanks to Noah. I can feel a very strong magic from the master over there. Lancer glanced at Noah and shook his head helplessly. There's no other way. After saying this, Lancer suddenly changed his position. Ding! Lancer pointed the tip of his spear downwards, while the other end was pointed upwards. His body tilted slightly as he held the crimson-red spear in his hand. His beast-like eyes glowed red under the moonlight as he glared at Ryder. Personally, I feel that this is enough. If possible, I would like to leave now. So, let me ask, how about we end it here for today? Although Lancer said that, it was obvious that he didn't intend to retreat because he thought he couldn't beat Ryder. Instead, he was very calm, as if he would definitely win if the battle continued. This made Noah's heart tremble. At this moment, the magic power rising from Lancer gave Noah a very dangerous feeling. Ryder seemed to have the same feeling as Noah. Her body instantly tensed up, and a trace of heaviness appeared on her usually expressionless face. Intuition told Noah and Ryder. Lancer was ready to use his trump card. In other words, Lancer was going to use his relic. Ryder! Noah stared at Lancer. He was talking to Ryder through the contract. Are you confident that you can take on Lancer's relic? I can try. Ryder's voice immediately sounded in Noah's heart. Servant's most powerful weapon is his relic. If I can find out the true form of Lancer's relic, not only will I know the effect of Lancer's relic, but I'll also know Lancer's true colors. If I can take it on, Lancer won't be a threat to Master in the future. Noah thought so too. A hero spirit's relic was closely related to its life, and it was even a weapon that it had used when it was alive. If he could find out the true form of Lancer's relic, it wouldn't be difficult for him to find out Lancer's true colors. However, the relic was also Servant's most powerful weapon. If he didn't do it well, he might end up making a fool of himself. Then, Ryder would have to leave here. After hesitating for a while, Noah immediately made up his mind. Anyway, in this battle of the Holy Grail War, every servant has their own victory and defeat. In the future, there's a high chance that we'll encounter Lancer again. Since that's the case, we'll have to face him sooner or later. Let's just settle it here and now. Ryder, I'll leave it to you to decide what to do next. In front of me, Ryder revealed an imperceptible smile. Like a cheetah, he crouched down and pressed one hand on the ground, while the other hand gripped the chain dagger tightly. His body surged with an extremely dense amount of magic power. Without needing any answer, Lancer already understood Noah and Ryder's choice. Is that so? Lancer closed his eyes slightly and suddenly opened them. Then try to take it on. It's my sure kill attack. The moment he finished his words, a surge of bright red magic surged from the spear in Lancer's hand like a flame. It set off waves of air, causing the atmosphere to become chaotic. The spear in Lancer's hand shook heavily. Lancer laughed grimly. The magic on the surface of his body began to flow gradually, surging toward the crimson spear in his hand. The spear began to be covered with layers of thick magic flames, becoming denser and denser. In the end, when the magic was surging, it actually formed a faint red energy shield on the crimson spear. Noah and Ryder's body tensed up almost at the same time. The magic on the spear was really too dangerous. On the other hand, the corners of Lancer's mouth were once again raised into a ferocious smile. The spear in his hand suddenly trembled strangely. After a moment, he stomped his feet on the ground fiercely. Like an afterimage, he charged forward violently. When a servant used a noble artifact, they generally needed to release the real name of the noble artifact. Therefore, at this moment, Lancer's violent roar reverberated throughout the entire space, announcing the name of the magic spear that everyone knew. Giebog. Following the violent roar, Lancer fiercely raised the spear in his hand high above his head. As he charged in Ryder's direction, when he was more than 10 meters away from Ryder, he heavily stabbed the sharp spear in his hand forward. Clang! On the tip of the crimson spear, bright red magic surged rapidly, causing the crimson light to suddenly expand and turn into a flash of red lightning. It pierced through the space like a random flash of lightning. After a few flashes back and forth, it violently shot in Ryder's direction. The vision in front of him was completely covered by a thick crimson light. Ryder subconsciously lifted the short sword that was connected to the chain, trying to block the crimson spear light. However, at this moment, Noah felt that something was wrong and extremely abruptly shouted, "Ryder!" Hearing Noah's shout, Ryder's heart skipped a beat. Like a conditioned reflex, he fiercely withdrew the sword in his hand and turned his body to the side. Clang! It was also at this moment that the crimson spear light, which was as fast as lightning, suddenly twisted and abruptly changed its direction, piercing towards Ryder's heart. As a result, when Ryder subconsciously turned his body to the side, the spear light actually brushed past Ryder's shoulder and shot towards the back. The crimson spear light pierced through the space like lightning and directly shot towards the sky, disappearing under the moonlight. Suddenly, the entire place became silent. On the crimson spear, the bright red magic flames gradually subsided. Not far away, Lancer raised his head and stared at Ryder with his eyes fixed on him, growling in a low voice. "You actually dodged it?" Lancer's voice was filled with surprise. On the other hand, Noah understood why Lancer had such a reaction. Chapter 712. In Celtic mythology, the famous sun god, Ruger Mac Esselin, had a half-human half-god son who was half-human and half-god. His original name was Sat Ant, and he was an irritable and hot-tempered warrior. In the Ulster legends of Celtic mythology, there were many descriptions of him and his people being bloodthirsty and indulging in alcohol. They even carried out countless massacres. Of course, this half-human, half-god son of the sun god was also a great hero and knight who was quite brave and skilled in battle. When he was 7 years old, he killed a fierce dog, and in order to compensate for the loss caused by this extreme action, he swore an oath to temporarily serve as the watchdog of the owner of this fierce dog. Since then, when this half-human, half-god hero and knight became famous, people called him the Fierce Dog of Cuillin, and from then on, he was known by the world as Cuillin Cuillin. Legend has it that this half-human, half-god hero and knight had a cursed magic spear. It was a magic spear that, once stabbed, would definitely hit the enemy's heart. Its name was Spear of Piercing Death, Gibog. Its specific ability was to reverse cause and effect. With the condition of heart in the heart as the prerequisite, it first determined the result of heart in the heart, and then using the reason of brandishing the spear to attack, it launched an attack. Because the result of heart in the heart was already predetermined, once the Spear of Piercing Death, Gibog, was launched and waved towards the enemy, then normal defense and evasion would be meaningless. No matter what, the Spear of Piercing Death, Gibog, would definitely hit the enemy's heart. This was the reason why this magic spear was called the Cursed Magic Spear. It was also a spear that directly reversed cause and effect, first determining the effect, and then leading to the cause of the fatal blow. If one wanted to make such a spear ineffective, unless one was lucky enough to change one's fate, otherwise, one would definitely not be able to escape the curse of having their heart pierced through. Fortunately, Ryder's luck was the highest grade, a grade. Moreover, it could be doubled in an instant, raising it to twice the original luck grade, which was A+ grade. In addition, Noah had extraordinary sensing ability. The moment he sensed that something was wrong, he immediately alerted Ryder and let Ryder dodge. As a result, this Spear of Piercing Death, Gibog, which was sure to kill in one hit, did not even cause the slightest bit of damage and directly lost its effectiveness. Then, with the legendary magic spear, Spear of Piercing Death, Gibog, there was no need to doubt Lancer's identity. Spear of Piercing Death, Gibog. Looking at Lancer, who was still in shock, Noah said in surprise, "Lancer, are you Kuchurin?" Lancer finally reacted and clicked his tongue, clicked his tongue, clicked his tongue. Sure enough, after using this move, there's no way to hide my identity anymore. Being too famous isn't a good thing. After twirling the red spear in his hand a few times in the air, Lancer turned around and left his defenseless back to Noah and Ryder. Looks like we'll have to stop here for today. Originally, I was only sent to investigate the situation, but in the end, I was stunned to see that I had to use my real strength, and I still have no way to defeat the opponent. The Holy Grail War is really interesting. I'm looking forward to fighting with the remaining few more. After saying that, Lancer turned his head and looked at Ryder. Although I don't know where you're from, I'll temporarily leave your heart with you. If there's a chance, I'll definitely come back to get it. Then, Lancer looked at Noah again, and a joyful smile appeared on his face. Master, you just saw the power of my Spear of Piercing Death, Gibog. It's really exciting that there's such an excellent existence like you in modern times. Before I come back to find you, don't get killed. After leaving these words, Lancer leaped like an agile and flexible monkey. He jumped onto the crown of a tall tree, then with a few leaps, he disappeared under the moonlight. Ryder seemed to want to chase after him, but he was stopped by Noah. Forget it, Ryder. Looking at the direction where Lancer gradually disappeared, Noah narrowed his eyes. That guy hasn't used all his means yet. If we chase after him now, it'll be more or less dangerous. Since the opponent has no intention to fight, we won't be able to fight even if we chase after him. After hearing Noah's words, Ryder slowly relaxed his body. He returned to Noah's side and said softly, "Don't worry. Master, Lancer's behavior seems to be a bit abnormal." Ryder just happened to say what Noah was thinking. He suddenly appeared and attacked Noah. The more intense the battle with Ryder became, the less he wanted to fight. In the end, although he took out his trump card, the Spear of Piercing Death, embark, after taking out his trump card, he immediately lost the will to fight and turned around to leave. Undoubtedly, Lancer still had some energy left, and he didn't suffer any injuries. His magic seemed to be very abundant as well. There was no sign of him being unable to fight at all, right? Such a sudden attack, and then he just left. It was as if his purpose from the beginning was not to fight. Rather than saying that he came to fight, it's better to say that he came to test the waters, right? Noah frowned. There's still the most important question. Yes. The most important question. From the beginning to the end, there was no trace of Lancer's master. With the range of Noah's sensing ability, it was not difficult at all to include the surrounding area in the investigation. Even so, there was no trace of Lancer's master. Then, the only possibility was that the master did not come with Lancer at all. This made Noah even more certain that Lancer was not here to fight. If he really decided to fight and determine the winner, it was impossible for the master not to be present. No matter what, at least I have more or less figured out Lancer's combat power. I also have a general idea of Servaner's strength. Noah rubbed his eyebrows. Fortunately, this level of strength can still be dealt with. In Noah's opinion, the combat power of Ryder and Lancer was similar to that of an S-rank magic shooter. Without relying on any magic or magic, Noah once forced Elusa, who was an S-rank magic shooter, to a draw in melee combat. At that time, Elusha did not use her full strength. It was about 70% of her strength. If magic cannons could work on servants, then ordinary servants would not be Noah's opponents. Unfortunately, most of the servants had the ability to deal with magic power. Lancer's magic resistance was only C rank, but it was already immune to magic caused by chance of less than 2 stanzas. Noah's simple magic cannon attack would not have any effect at all. It must be mentioned here that magic chants had a difference between a project and a stanza. A project referred to a chant that could be formed with one movement of fingers, teeth, and so on. This was the shortest chant that could activate magic in an instant, and the time required was less than 1 second. A stanza was a chant that used incantations and pronunciation. No matter how fast the chant was, it would take at least 1 second. If 2 stanzas were placed side by side, it would be 2 stanzas. If 3 stanzas were placed side by side, it would be 3 stanzas. This way, the chant would continue to grow longer. Of course, with each additional stanza, the time would also be extended by about 1 second. Lancer's magic resistance could nullify magic caused by chants of less than 2 stanzas, which required about 2 seconds to activate. Noah's magic cannon was simply processing and shooting out magic. It only required 1 project's chant, and it was not at the level of a stanza. Therefore, there was no way for magic cannons to work on Lancer. In this way, Noah could only use Enhance Magic, but that would also be able to surpass the S-rank magic shooter. In other words, even if he did not rely on servants, Noah alone was enough to deal with a servant with a higher ability value like Lancer. As for the 3 major spells of Fairy Tale, the preparation time was too long, so it was better to keep it as a trump card. Chapter 7:13. Just as Noah and Ryder were being probed by Lancer, another place in Fuyuki City was also quietly changing. In the dark insect cave in Jiantong's house, Jiantong Zainan stared at the scene inside with his skeleton-like horrified eyes. His hand holding the walking stick was trembling all the time. Clang! He saw that in that dark and full of disgusting mark bugs, a bright golden light that seemed to intend to dispel the darkness and evil here was flickering all the time. It was like a small sun, very dazzling. In the bright light, Jiantong Yingying hugged her knees and shrank in the corner, burying her head deep in her knees. Her whole body seemed to be protected by a protective barrier made of bright golden crystals. Only the corner where Jiantong Yingying was in was the only open area here. As for why, it was because outside the barrier that protected Tsaritsa and Cherry, there were many disgusting palm-sized insects stacked together. They kept trying to drill into the barrier like ants, but it was as if they were blocked. Not a single one of them could drill into the barrier. Seeing this scene, Jiantong Zainin could not help but tremble. Why? This was the thing that Jiantong Zainin was most furious and puzzled about. Undoubtedly, the power that had been protecting Jiantong Yingying for more than 10 years was almost exhausted a few days ago. Jiantong Zainin was sure that he was not mistaken. After all, in order to exhaust the power and transform Jiantong Yingying alive, Jiantong Zainin had been attacking Jiantong Yingying in disguise for the past 10 years. He even drove Jiantong Yingying into the insect cave every day, and used the continuous attacks to stimulate the power to protect Jiantong Yingying. He tried to let the power be in a state of exhaustion, and let it be exhausted sooner. For this reason, Jiantong Zainin had observed for 10 years and tried his best to attack Jiantong Yingying for 10 years. As a result, it was not easy to see that the power was about to be exhausted. However, just a few days ago, the power inexplicably recovered. Jiantong Zainin had observed the mysterious power that protected Jiantong Yingying for 10 years. How could he not see that the power hidden in Jiantong Yingying's body that protected it did not show any signs of exhaustion? Instead, it became stronger and stronger since a few days ago. Now, the mysterious power that protected Jiantong Yingying even faintly had the same intensity as when Jiantong Zainin first pushed Jiantong Yingying into the insect cave 10 years ago. In the end, he found that the power appeared to protect Jiantong Yingying. What did this mean? This meant that regardless of why this power had recovered and whether it would recover in the future, even if it didn't, Tong Yenzai would have to work hard for another 10 years before he could see any hope of exhausting it. Another 10 years? Jiantong Zainin. Damn it. The furious Jiantong Zainin could only vent his anger on Jiantong Yingying. He drove the terrifying insect pile, like locusts blotting out the sky and covering the earth, to rush in the direction of Jiantong Yingying. However, they could only be blocked by the protective screen formed by the mysterious power like before. They were even directly shaken back and were shaken to death. Inside the protective screen, Jiantong Yingying's body shrank into a ball. Hearing Jiantong Zainin Yingying's furious voice, she was afraid and happy at the same time. Now, Jiantong Yingying could basically confirm that the power that had been protecting her in her body had recovered because it had been replenished. Replenished? Whether it was last time or the time before, Jiantong Yingying could feel that Noah had injected magic into her body to heal her. Although Jiantong Yingying had not learned any magic and the magic circuit in her body had not been fully activated and there was only a very weak level of magic, as a natural magician embryo, she could still detect traces of magic. Also, because she was born in Jiantong Yingying, even if she did not inherit Jiantong Yingying's magic, she still had the necessary magic knowledge. Therefore, Jiantong Yingying knew that the power that had been protecting her in her body had recovered most likely because of the magic that Noah had injected into her body. Thinking of this, Jiantong Yingying could not help but recall the boy who acted and behaved very freely, but was actually very gentle. Was she really saved by that person? Thank you very much. At this moment, Jiantong Yingying felt a burning pain on the back of her hand. At the same time, Jiantong Yingying seemed to have discovered something. He stopped roaring and attacking, and laughed sinisterly. I see. Is it finally here? Hearing Jiantong Yingying's voice, Jiantong Yingying's heart had an ominous premonition. She looked at the back of her hand. The next moment, Jiantong Yingying's heart suddenly trembled. Because, on the back of one of Jiantong Yingying's hands, there was a bruise-like mark. It can't be a lie. A wish machine that could fulfill the wish of the holder, Holy Grail. Its main purpose was to open the passage to the source, and fix the hole of this passage. And the most fundamental purpose of the magician was to reach the source. In that case, there was no need to doubt who started this Holy Grail war. Like Sano City, Fuyuki City also had a spiritual vein, and the underground flow was extremely powerful. And the manager of Fuyuki City's spiritual vein was a magician family named Enbin. In other words, Rin Enbin, who Noah met during the day, was the secret manager of Fuyuki City. The so-called Holy Grail War was a big ceremony based on this spiritual vein. In order to reach the source, led by Enbin, 3 magician families jointly established the Holy Grail ceremony on this land. These three magician families were respectively the manager of Fuyuki City who was good at using gem magic, the Enban family; the low-level servant who was good at controlling insects, the foreign magician family, the Jiantong family. There was also a foreign magician who was good at using alchemy, the Einstein's family. These three magician families were the ones who established the Holy Grail War. The Enban family was responsible for providing the land of Fuyuki City so that the ritual Holy Grail could absorb enough magic from the spiritual vein, and then the Jiantong family, who was good at controlling the servant, created the command spell for the servant. The Einstein's family was responsible for the entire Holy Grail system and constructed the foundation of the Holy Grail. The so-called Holy Grail War came about in this way. Although Jiantong Yingying was not successfully transformed by Jiantong Inkstone and did not inherit the magic of the Jiantong family, because of the uniqueness of the Jiantong family, she naturally also had the knowledge of the Holy Grail War. Therefore, Jiantong Yingying could recognize the command spell on the back of Noah's hand at a glance, and could also recognize the Holy Grail on the back of her hand at a glance. And even Jiantong Yingying had this ability, not to mention Jiantong Inkstone. Although you did not inherit the magic, and even your magic is very weak as a natural magician embryo, you were still chosen by the Holy Grail ? Jiantong Inkstone's skeleton-like eyes flashed with a terrifying light, and he clicked his tongue and turned his back. In that case, Sakura, I will give you a chance. Chance? Jiantong Yingying covered her hand with the Holy Grail and was stunned. Jiantong Inkstone laughed out loud. As long as you can win this Holy Grail War and give me the Holy Grail, I will allow you to leave the Jiantong family, and I will also give you a sum of money that you don't have to worry about food and clothing, and let you live as an ordinary person. How about it? Hearing this, Jiantong Yingying's hand that was holding the Holy Grail tightly clenched. Could she leave the Jiantong family? Leave this hell-like demon's den? Could she live like an ordinary person? That was simply Jiantong Yingying's dream. But, to win the Holy Grail War? How could that be possible? Jiantong Yingying not only did not know any magic, but even her magic was so weak that Noah's sensing ability could not detect it. How could she win under such unfavorable conditions? Most importantly, in this way, it meant that Jiantong Yingying had to be the enemy of the person who saved her. No, I don't want. Jiantong Yingying shook her head in horror. I don't want. I don't want. Don't want. Jiantong Inkstone laughed sinisterly. As the nominal successor of the Jiantong family, you can't escape this fate, Sakura. Leaving this sentence, Jiantong Inkstone left, leaving Jiantong Yingying alone in a daze. In the end, what should I do? Chapter 7:14. The next day, Noah, who finished washing up early, came out of the apartment and went to the restaurant that had been closed for the past few days. Yawning, Noah resisted the remaining sleepiness. Even though his face was a little lazy, his footsteps were still quite steady. Of course, Noah didn't let himself maintain this lazy appearance. He quickly pulled himself together and quickened his pace. The appearance of Lancer yesterday made Noah realize that the real beginning of the Holy Grail War was not far away. Lancer inadvertently revealed that before meeting Ryder he had already fought with Berserker, which proved that at least 3 servants had gathered in Fuyuki City. The remaining 4 servants could be gathered at any time. As long as 7 servants were gathered, then the battle called the Holy Grail War would really begin. Before that, if I can meet Berserker, it may be a good thing to test his strength. With this thought in mind, soon, Noah's vision appeared in front of the restaurant that he had been to twice. At this time, Ryder's voice suddenly sounded. Master, Noah was just about to yawn again, but when he was called by Ryder, his movement also stopped. Then Ryder said, That's right. There is a servant nearby. Without Ryder's reminder, Noah also detected an abnormal magic within the range of his sensing ability. At this moment, Noah turned his head and looked in the direction of the abnormal magic. As a result, Noah saw it. On the sidewalk in front of the restaurant, on the familiar side of the flower bed, 2 girls were standing side by side. They were quite eye-catching, and they often attracted the attention of the surrounding pedestrians. These 2 girls, One looked at her partner with an uneasy expression, and the other directly cast her gaze and accurately fell on Noah, revealing a sense of displeasure and seriousness in her eyes. They were Tong Ing and Rin Enbin. The servant is next to the magician. Ryder, who was spiritualized, told Noah so. In that case, there was no need to doubt the identity of the master of the servant who was spiritualized like Ryder. Apart from Rin Enbin, who else could it be? After all, Rin Enosaka had the stigmata and was chosen by the Holy Grail as a candidate for master. Then, it wouldn't be strange for him to summon a servant and become a master last night. With these thoughts running through his mind, Noah did not have the slightest scruple on the surface, and directly walked in the direction of Tosakura and Rin Enbin. As Noah approached, Noah clearly heard Rin Dosaka's muffled gasp. He actually came. That guy. Hearing this soft voice, Noah couldn't help but laugh in his heart. Speaking of which, yesterday, Tong Ing had indeed asked Noah to continue looking at her foot injury today. But because of Lancer's attack yesterday, Noah's mind was full of the Holy Grail War after he returned home, and he really did forget about this matter. However, had Jian Tanjing's foot injury not healed yet? That was just a small sprain. For an injury of this degree, when Noah first healed Tong Ing, he should have healed it with magic, right? With such doubts, Noah came in front of the two girls. For a moment, Noah felt that the servant other than Ryder was emitting a fierce aura. The moment she noticed this aura, Ryder, who was spiritualized, also mobilized her magic. Two auras that could not be detected by bystanders collided in the air, and the friction created fierce sparks, making the atmosphere at the scene become hostile. Whether it was Noah or Rin Enbin, they both noticed this change. However, both of them knew that this was their servant guarding against each other. Therefore, Noah and Rin Enbin deliberately ignored this change, allowing their servant to be on guard, and they themselves looked at each other. The first to speak was Noah. "Why are you here?" "Ah, Mr. Noah doesn't know?" Rin Enbin, like a dignified young lady, showed a perfect smile to Noah. "Of course, to prevent some people from getting close to my schoolmate, Tenbana-senpai." Jian Tanjing hurriedly said. "Mr. Noah is really not a bad person. Sakura, you have to know, in this world, the human heart is very complicated." Rin Enbin glanced at Noah meaningfully. Some people are not as simple as they seem on the surface. There was no need to guess who she was referring to. Helpless, Jian Tanjing could only bow to Noah and apologize. "I'm sorry, Mr. Noah, Tenbana-senpai is like this for me, please don't mind." While speaking, Jian Tanjing looked at Noah with uneasy eyes. "Please don't be angry, it's all my fault." "You?" Noah bitterly smiled. "I had a feeling the first time I saw you. You seem to have low self-esteem and your thoughts are very negative. Moreover, there is always uneasiness in your eyes. If possible, it's better to be a little more confident in yourself. Or has your confidence been absorbed by the young lady beside you?" "What do you mean?" Rin Enbin widened his eyes and stared at Noah. "Are you saying that I'm overconfident?" "I didn't say that," Noah said with a half smile. "It's just a little advice from an adult, don't mind it." Little girl." Rin Enbin's face almost twisted. "You're just a little older than me, how can you be considered an adult?" "At least, I'm not at the age where I should stay in school," Noah kindly reminded. "Normal people call this kind of person an adult. Who invented such a stupid standard?" Rin Enbin said with disdain. "If a childish guy like you is considered an adult, then I'm going to give up on being an adult." "Is that so?" Noah glanced at Rin Enbin's not-so-protruding part and smiled. "You can easily tell that she's still a little girl." Rin Enbin felt an uncontrollable anger bursting from the bottom of his heart, making him want to strangle Noah. On the other side, Tong Ing looked at Noah and Rin Enbin who were arguing with each other. Her eyes were filled with envy. In Jian Tanjing's eyes, Noah and Rin Enbin's behavior was like a close friend who had known each other for many years. It made her feel like she shouldn't be there, and a trace of disappointment appeared in her heart. Noah had been paying attention to Jian Tanjing. After noticing the disappointment in Jian Tanjing's eyes, Noah sighed. "So, didn't I tell you to be a little more confident?" Only then did Jian Tanjing wake up and subconsciously lower her head. I'm sorry, you're apologizing again, you child? Noah rubbed his eyebrows as if he had a headache, and suddenly grabbed Jian Tanjing's hand. Since that's the case, come and accompany me today. After saying that, Noah didn't even give Jian Tanjing a chance to react, and directly pulled her in another direction. Mr. Noah? Jian Tanjing exclaimed out loud. Where are you going to take me? Anywhere is fine. Noah said without turning his head, taking Tong Ying with him. I don't know why, but I feel a little uncomfortable when I see you being so polite to the point of inferiority. So, today, your task is to get familiar with me, and when you feel less restrained and inferior in front of me, I'll let you go. But, Jian Tanjing, who was being pulled away by Noah, didn't even have the thought of resisting, but quickly said, I have to go to class. Class? Noah retorted with a single sentence. Looking at you, I don't think you've ever skipped class, but if you haven't skipped class, then it's not like you're enjoying school life. Today's class, just skip it. Jian Tanjing could only helplessly be taken away by Noah domineeringly. Looking at the gradually disappearing Noah and Jian Tanjing, Rin Enbin, who was stunned by the sudden development, reacted. Where do you want to take Sakura? Abduction. Chapter 7:15. This is, looking at the high-rise hotel in front of her, Toru Sakura was stunned and didn't react for a long time. On the side, although Rin Enosaka wasn't as stunned as Toru Sakura, he frowned and looked at Noah with displeasure. Why did you bring us here? To be precise, I just brought Sakura here. Noah corrected him. You followed me here. If I didn't follow you, who knows what you would do to Sakura? Rin retorted. Also, don't call her so intimately. What's your relationship with Sakura? We met by chance. Noah replied with a smile. Of course, we won't be soon. After that, Noah no longer paid any attention to Rin Inaka. He grabbed Tomoyaka's hand again and led her into the hotel. Tomoyaka looked at him in confusion. Let's go, follow me. Noah-san. Toru Sakura said shyly as she looked at Noah holding her hand. You? Where are you going to take me? That's right. Noah turned his head and smiled. You'll know soon. That guy. Seeing that Noah didn't want to pay attention to him, Rin Enosaka was so angry that his ponytail was about to stand up. How dare he ignore me? I must teach him a lesson. As soon as his voice fell, another calm and cold voice sounded from the surroundings and drilled into Rin Enosaka's ears. Rin, that master doesn't seem to be simple. If you continue to follow him like this, I think it's too irrational. I don't need you to tell me. Rin Enosaka threw out such a sentence without looking back. But that guy has been pestering Sakura. I can't not watch from the side, right? Rin Enosaka didn't wait for a response. Seeing that Noah and Toru Sakura were about to enter the hotel, he quickly followed them. Ding! With the sound of the elevator, Noah, Rin Enosaka, and Tomoki Sakura arrived at the top floor of the hotel. The scene that appeared before their eyes left Noah and the other two young ladies stunned once again. What appeared before the three of them was a very spacious venue. The size of the venue was similar to a ballroom. Not only were there round tables covered with white cloths placed everywhere, there were also long square tables in the corners with all kinds of dishes and glasses filled with champagne placed on them. In addition, there were people in high-class dresses in the venue. There was also a space in the middle for some couples to dance. It was like a ball in the upper class. There was indeed a ball being held here. When Noah appeared with the two girls, many people in the venue turned their attention to them. When they realized that the three people who came were very young and were wearing casual clothes, they looked at each other. In such an atmosphere, not to mention Tomoki Sakura, even Rin Enosaka was a little embarrassed. They were surrounded by upper-class people wearing high-class dresses, only they were wearing casual clothes. Wasn't that like an ugly duckling breaking into a group of swans? Noah. Mr. Noah. Tomoki Sakura unconsciously hid behind Noah, her eyes full of uneasiness. Hey. Rin Enosaka tried his best to maintain a calm expression, but behind his back, he gritted his teeth and growled at Noah. Why did you bring us here? Hearing this, Noah ignored Rin Enosaka and Tomoki Sakura. Under the strange gaze of the people in the venue, after looking around the entire venue, he fixed his eyes on one person. At the same time, that person also looked over and was startled. When he found that it was Noah, he showed a happy expression. After apologizing to the people around him, he came over. "Mr. Noah, you actually came?" The person who came was wearing a high-class dress. He was a man about 30 years old. He looked like a successful person. His behavior was not only very dignified, but also quite enthusiastic. "I thought you weren't coming." "I'm sorry, Mr. Fujita." Noah reached out and shook hands with the man who he called Fujita. "I changed my mind at the last minute. I hope it won't cause you trouble." "Why would it?" Fujita shook Noah's hand. He was quite enthusiastic. "I'm very happy that you can come. Let me introduce them to you." After a while of greeting with Fujita, Noah turned sideways, letting Rin Enosaka and Tomoki Sakura enter Fujita's field of vision. "These two are my companions. I brought them together today to support you." "Hello, two beautiful ladies." Fujita politely greeted them. "Just like Noah, just call me Fujita." Hello." Tomoki Sakura quickly returned the greeting. "Greetings, Mr. Fujita." Rin Enosaka, on the other hand, seemed to have finally adjusted her state of mind. She was like a real noble lady, bowing to Fujita with an elegant attitude. She didn't seem to be as bad as when she was with Noah. "I'm sorry to disturb you. As you can see, this is Mr. Fujita. We also recently met by chance." Noah introduced to Rin Enosaka and Tomoki Sakura. "Mr. Fujita is a very famous jeweler. During this period of time, he also came to Fuyuki City to look for jewelry, and came here on a business trip because I have a good gem, so we met by chance some time ago." "Jeweler?" Tomoki Sakura's expression was a little stiff. This is a real upper-class rich man, isn't it?" "Jeweler?" Rin Enosaka, on the other hand, reacted to the word jewelry in an instant. Then he pretended to be serious and coughed. However, when he looked at Fujita, his eyes sparkled as if he was looking at a fat pig. Fujita was a little scared. "The gem in Mr. Noah's hand is the best." At the moment, Fujita quickly said with a smile. "When I was in the car, I was attracted by the color of the gem in Mr. Noah's hand. At that time, Mr. Noah seemed to be planning to sell the gem. I was so scared that I even forgot to follow the traffic rules and quickly got out of the car. Because of this, I was fined a lot of tickets, haha." As far as the result is concerned, Mr. Fujita bought the gem in my hand, and I was in need of a sum of money at that time. Both sides had a pleasant discussion. Then Mr. Fujita invited me to attend today's ball. Noah explained, then said to Fujita, "I'm sorry, Mr. Fujita, although I refused at that time, I suddenly came to disturb you today. If possible, can you help us prepare the dress?" "No problem." Fujita readily agreed. "Come with me." Turning around, Fujita called Noah and the others and walked in the direction of the inner room. Behind Fujita, Rin Enosaka quietly walked to Noah's side and asked as if he couldn't stand it, "Hey, what are you going to do?" "Mr. Noah." Tong Ying's face became even more uneasy. "Are we going to the ball too? That's not very good, right? You always have this idea that makes you feel so inferior." Noah glanced at Tong Ying with a smile. "Don't worry, I'll tell you today, you don't have to feel inferior at all." About half an hour later, Noah, wearing a black tuxedo, reappeared at the ball and attracted a lot of attention. Noah originally had an otherworldly temperament and a free and easy atmosphere. In addition, his appearance was not bad. With the tuxedo, Noah naturally looked like he came from an extraordinary background. Many women in the ball frequently looked at him. Fortunately, the women here were all from the upper class and had a lot of education. They were not as bold as the students when Noah worked in Kamigami Academy. However, they always looked at Noah with passionate eyes. Many of them even raised their wine glasses to Noah with some shyness and greeted Noah from a distance. Noah also raised his glass and responded to the people around him with a smile. At least on the surface, he did enough. Noah was not a country boy who had never attended a ball before. No matter which world, Noah more or less came into contact with the upper class, so he was naturally familiar with this. At this time, there was a slight noise around him. Noah subconsciously looked in the same direction as the hubbub, and the corners of his mouth curled up. Chapter 7:16. At this moment, everyone in the ballroom tacitly cast their eyes in one direction and subconsciously stopped what they were doing, making the entire ballroom fall into a brief silence. Not for anything else, but because there were two beautiful flowers that attracted everyone's attention. Tap, 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 tap. Amidst the clear sound of high heels landing on the ground, two young girls walked out side by side from the inner room of the venue, slowly walking out. They were naturally Rin and Osaka and Tama Tanjing. However, at this moment, Rin and Osaka and Tama Tanjing were no longer the girls who would be looked at strangely by the people in the ballroom. At this moment, everyone's gaze on Rin and Osaka and Tama Tanjing was no longer strange, only amazement and admiration. They saw that Rin and Osaka and Tama Tanjing had changed out of their uniforms and put on a rather high-class dress. Rin and Osaka was wearing a bright red dress made of very high-end fabric. The bright red gown seemed to be meant to accentuate Rin and Osaka's elegance. It was embellished with jade fragments, and the hem was long enough to reach her ankles. It was like a cheongsam, with a split in the middle. It perfectly displayed Rin and Osaka's charm in an instant. In addition, Rin and Osaka's black hair, which was originally tied into two ponytails, had been completely removed from her hair accessories. Instead, it was tied into a long ponytail on the right side of her head, making her look even more noble and charming. Tama Tanjing, who was walking beside Rin and Osaka, was also beautiful. Originally, Tama Tanjing had a very delicate appearance, and her figure was also tall and full, more suitable than Rin and Osaka to wear a dress. Now, Tama Tanjing was wearing a pink dress. But different from Rin and Osaka, Tama Tanjing was wearing a princess dress style. Her white shoulders were directly exposed to the air, and the hem was like a pleated long skirt that went straight to the feet. Only a pair of high heels could enter the eyes of others. Lightly walking, it made people feel as if they were looking at a person dancing elegantly, very eye-catching. The appearance of the two girls was like a bright flower blooming under the sun, eye-catching. Although it was not to the extent that everyone in the ballroom fell in love with them, but everyone's eyes were instantly filled with the figures of the two girls at this moment, revealing their emotions. Other than amazement, there was only admiration. Noah was the only one who noticed that something was amiss. Or rather, it should be said that he noticed a trace of abnormality in the two girls' behavior. Rin and Osaka's charming face had a unique smile. She really did look like a well-educated young miss. Her movements and posture were very elegant, without a trace of stiffness. Perhaps it was because she had never attended a ball like this before, but even though her movements and posture weren't stiff, the smile on her face was a little fake. If one wasn't familiar with Rin and Osaka, they wouldn't be able to tell. As for Tong Ying, this young girl did not have the slightest bit of elegance in her actions. Instead, she lowered her head and did not dare to look around. She seemed very uneasy. In addition, Tama Tanjing seemed to have never worn high heels before. Her footsteps were more or less unsteady. If Rin and Osaka was not by her side, she would have been seen through. Under such circumstances, the two girls who were originally just ordinary high school students were forced to the edge of a cliff. At least at this moment, with their elegant posture, they stepped into the scene of the upper-class scene. If this continued, even Rin and Osaka would not be able to stand the gaze of the upper-class people around them, right? Immediately, Noah shook his head and laughed. Well, it's time to help them out. Saying this, Noah put down the wine glass in his hand, stepped in the direction of the two girls, and walked in the direction of the two girls. With this move, Noah also became the focus of everyone's attention, and to a certain extent, the surrounding people's attention was drawn away from Rin and Osaka and Tama Tanjing to a certain extent. Then, under the gaze of everyone present, under Rin and Osaka's somewhat angry eyes and Tama Tanjing's uneasy expression, Noah came in front of the two girls, bent down, and extended one of his hands to Tama Tanjing. "This beautiful lady, can I have a dance with you?" "Huh?" Tama Tanjing suddenly panicked. "Mimi?" "Yes." Noah smiled at Tong Ing with a smile that couldn't be found wrong with it. I hope this beautiful lady will do me the honor. Tama Tanjing looked at Rin and Osaka, not knowing what to do. Isn't it good? Rin and Osaka did not know if it was because Noah did not invite him, but he turned his head away. If you don't dance, then it's not a ball. But, Tama Tanjing tightly held the hand with the white glove and said with extreme nervousness, I don't know how to dance. Don't worry, Noah said softly with a smile. I will lead you, you just need to follow me. After that, Noah did not even give Tama Tanjing a chance to react, and directly took Tama Tanjing's hand and moved in the direction of the dance floor. Now, Tama Tanjing could only tightly hold Noah's hand and use this to eliminate the uneasiness in her heart. Not long after, the two came to the center of the dance floor. With one hand holding Tama Tanjing's hand, and the other hand on Tama Tanjing's waist, Noah looked at Tama Tanjing's still uneasy expression and said in a mosquito's voice, Relax, just leave it to me, trust me. The words, trust me, made Tama Tanjing's uneasiness inexplicably dissipate a little. Looking at Noah's dark and deep eyes, she subconsciously nodded. Seeing this, Noah smiled and led Tama Tanjing to dance slowly in the center of the dance floor. Although Noah doesn't know any modern dance, but when it comes to social dancing, because he once needed to go to many occasions in the world of the Dark Bullet, he also learned it for a period of time. For Noah, who is good at using his body to fight in close combat, the movements of social dancing are much easier to learn than he imagined. It didn't take long for Noah to almost completely master it, and he has also shown it on many occasions. Now, the world is different, and the dance partner is no longer a high-level official who needs to be skilled on the surface. Noah just took the girl who was inexplicably very inferior to herself, and led the girl named Tama Tanjing with the most concise, clear, and easy movements, followed the music and immersed in the dance steps. Tama Tanjing felt as if she couldn't control her body, and she was always led by Noah. However, Tama Tanjing's heart, under the influence of Noah and the music, was gradually immersed in it, but she kept looking directly at Noah's eyes, and gradually there were ripples in her eyes. The people around seemed to have been influenced by Noah and Tama Tanjing, and they began to join the dance ranks. As for those who didn't join in, they stood at the side and watched the young man and woman dancing gracefully in the middle of the dance floor with knowing smiles on their faces. Their eyes were filled with delight, and they seemed to be quite fond of it. Lowering his head, Noah met Tama Tanjing's eyes, who had been looking at him, and said softly, You see, everyone is looking at you without any disdain or disgust at all, right? Tong Ing seemed to have been awakened. She looked around and saw those people who were pointing at Noah and herself. However, there was no disdain or disgust in their eyes. Instead, they were quite appreciative of them. So, you don't need to feel inferior at all. Noah's voice echoed softly in Tama Tanjing's ears. Although it's incredible, I don't know why, but I can feel that there seems to be a shadow in your heart. I know that you must be a person with a lot of stories. Tama Tanjing immediately lowered her head and fell silent. Everyone has their own secrets, and I won't force you to do anything. Noah said with a smile as if he didn't see Tama Tanjing's performance. But no matter what, at least, you must not give up on yourself, and that's right. Tama Tanjing almost involuntarily said such a sentence. What if I can't save myself at all? Noah said without hesitation. Then wait until you can't do anything, and then ask for help from those you can trust. Ask for help? Tama Tanjing was stunned. There's nothing to hesitate about. Noah said casually. After that, I'll use my whole life to repay them. These words directly swayed into Tama Tanjing's heart, and did not calm down for a long time. Chapter 717. Because of Noah, Rin Hasaka and Tomoki Sakura skipped class for the whole day and stayed at the hotel's ball for the whole day. It wasn't until evening that Noah, Rin and Osaka, and Tomoki Sakura expressed their gratitude to Fujita for entertaining them. They walked out of the hotel under Fujita's escort. Sigh. Rin sighed as soon as they left the hotel. I feel more tired than ever today. Tomoki nodded, but she also remembered the scene where she and Noah danced on the dance floor. She glanced at Noah, blushed, turned around, and bowed to Noah to thank him. "Thank you, San. Thank you for taking care of us today." "Oh." Noah raised his eyebrows. "Finally, it's not an apology, but a thank you. I'll gladly accept it." "Accept what?" As if his sore spot had been touched, Rin Enbin came to Xiao Ying's side and faced Noah. He pointed at Noah's nose. "Because of you, we skipped classes for a whole day. How are we going to explain this to the school tomorrow? Can't you just tell them the truth?" Noah shrugged. "Just tell your teacher that someone invited you to the dance. That's easy. That's not a treat." Rin was angry when she saw Noah's carefree attitude. "No matter what, after today, don't bother Sakura anymore." Hearing Rin Enbin's words, Noah suddenly remembered something and looked at Sakura. "By the way, your feet should be fine, right?" Yes. Tomoki's eyes were a little evasive. No problem, please don't worry, is that so?" Noah nodded. "That's good." "Mph." Rin snorted, turned around and said to Tomoki. "It's getting late, Sakura, you should go back first." "Huh?" Tomoki suddenly tilted her head. "Then what about Tenosaka-senpai?" "Me?" Rin and Osaka glanced at Noah. "I still have some things to take care of." There was no need to ask to know who Rin Enbin was referring to. Tong Ying opened her mouth, as if she wanted to say something, but in the end, she chose not to say it and nodded. "I understand. I'll go back first." "Sorry, I won't be seeing you off." Rin Enbin turned around and looked at Noah with a serious expression. "You come with me." With that, Rin and Osaka turned and left without waiting for Noah's reply. Undoubtedly, that girl acts like a lady when she's with others, but when she's with me, it's like she's facing an enemy. It's as if I owe her money and haven't returned it. Noah shook his head helplessly. "Then Xiaoying, I won't send you off. Be careful when you get home." "Yes." Tong Ying clenched her hands tightly. In the end, she couldn't hold back and said this to Noah. "Noah-san, Tenosaka-senpai only said those words to protect me. Please don't take it to heart. Also, please don't get into a conflict with Tenosaka-senpai because of me." Noah patted Tong Ying's shoulder. "Don't worry." With that, Noah followed behind Rin Enbin and left the scene. Looking at Noah and Rin Enbin walking further and further away, Tanjin bit her lips. Her heart was filled with worry. Whether it was Noah or Rin Enbin, they both thought that Tong Ying was just an ordinary outsider. They didn't expect that Tong Ying's understanding of the Holy Grail War was no less than theirs. Of course, Tong Ying also knew that Noah and Rin Enbin had both become master. If Noah and Rin Enbin really fought, what should she do? Undoubtedly, Tong Ying knew this, but she couldn't do anything. She felt powerless. At this time, Tong Ying recalled Noah's words. "When you can't do anything, ask others for help." Muttering such a sentence, Tong Ying opened one of her hands and let the back of her hand face herself. On it, the bruise-like sacred mark was particularly conspicuous under the setting sun. Today, in order to not let Noah and Rin Enbin discover this sacred mark, Tong Ying had been using the long sleeve of her uniform to cover the back of her hand. She had also been careful not to let Noah and Rin Enbin discover this sacred mark. Looking at this sacred mark, Tong Ying struggled in her heart. If she could summon a servant, then she would have the ability to stop all of this and also have the ability to save herself. In addition, Tong Ying also said that as long as she gave him the Holy Grail, he would let Tong Ying leave the Tong family. That was something that Tong Ying had always dreamed of. However, whether it was Noah or Rin Enbin, they were both people that Tong Ying didn't want to hurt. If she summoned a servant and became the master, then she would have to become enemies with those two people. Only this, absolutely not. Tong Ying tightly held the sacred mark on the back of her hand. After a long time, Tong Ying's heart flashed with an idea that calmed her down. Following behind Rin Enbin, Noah came to the inside of a forest. Once they were deep in the woods and out of sight of the skyscrapers, Rin Dosaka stopped and turned around to face Noah with a serious expression on his face. On the other hand, Noah's face was as calm as ever. After looking around, he said casually, "Is this all?" This is all." Rin Enbin raised his hand and showed the back of his hand to Noah. If you see this, you will understand, right? On the back of Rin Enbin's hand, there were 3 simple symbols that looked like the sun. That was Rin Enbin's command incantation. I don't need you to tell me that you summoned a servant, Rin Enbin. Noah did not even look at the back of Rin Enbin's hand. Instead, he looked at the person beside Rin Enbin. After all, the person beside you has been targeting me. If he didn't have any ill intentions, my servant would have killed him already. You're still so confident, but I'll say the same thing. Don't think that you can defeat me. Rin Enbin was not angry at all. Although my servant is not the strongest saber, it is not to be underestimated. As soon as he finished his words, a red shadow appeared. Profession: Archer Master, Rin Enbin. Real name? Attributes: Neutral, moderate ability points, Strength, D durability, C agility, C magic power, B luck, I relics. Profession skills: Against magic power, D magic power of this level could be easily broken by a slightly stronger magician. Solo action: Bevan. If the master's magic power supply is interrupted, it has the ability to act on its own temporarily. Level B. When the master is lost or the contract is cancelled, it can last for about 2 days without magic power supply. Protection skills: Clairvoyance, also known as the Eagle's Eye, vision ability. It was a necessary ability for an archer. It was also often used for reconnaissance. Just by looking from a high place, you could see the whole town and search for the enemy. In addition, it also affected the shooting accuracy of the bow. When the bow was set up, even if the opponent was moving at high speed, as long as the distance was within 4 kilometers, you could accurately snipe. The accuracy of the long-distance sniping beyond the human territory could be carried out. Magic: C, A+. The magic that he had learned in his previous life was generally ordinary. Before he became a heroic spirit, it was very difficult for him to even use Enhance. However, he had another magic that could be said to be unique. He could replicate almost perfect weapons, including the composition of materials. When he replicated, he could even read the effects of the master skills. Even the servant's noble phantoms and combat skills were no exception. Only when he used this magic, the skill would be upgraded to A+ level. Mind's Eye, True B. The insight cultivated from cultivation and forging was the ability to calmly grasp one's own situation and the enemy's ability in a disadvantageous situation and find a battle theory that allowed one to find a way to survive. Class B meant that even if there was only a 1% chance of reversing the situation, one would be able to grasp the opportunity and implement it with tactics. Based on the information obtained, one would be able to predict the opponent's actions and break out of the situation. That was only supported by overwhelming combat experience and was not something one could achieve. It was a skill that could only be obtained through repeated cultivation. Chapter 7:18. Almost at the moment when the archer servant appeared, Noah had already seen through his ability value. After seeing through Archer's ability value, Noah's heart was full of surprise. There were 3 points of surprise. 1. As one of the 3 knights, the ability value of the archer servant was too low. It was much lower than Lancer, who was also one of the 3 knights. 2. In Archer's ability value, there was nothing in the column of the noble phantasm, not even a level. It was really puzzling. 3. As everyone knew, the servants of the 3 knights had magic skills. Although the archer in front of him also had magic skills, the level was only D level. It could only nullify the level of magic. In other words, this archer not only did not have the ability value to match the name of the 3 knights, but he also did not have the magic strength that the 3 knights should have. How should he say it? Wasn't he too weak? Of course, the blank column of the noble phantasm and Archer's skills attracted Noah's attention. Perhaps Archer was the same as Ryder. They were the type that was particularly outstanding in terms of noble phantasm and skills. After seeing through Archer's ability value, Noah saw Archer's appearance. It was a man who was half a head taller than Noah. He was wearing a red and black knight suit. His skin was quite dark, and his hair was white. Indeed, I have been locking on to your breath. Under Noah's gaze, The archer servant also looked straight at Noah and said expressionlessly, "But I didn't expect that you actually found out. It's really rare to see a magician with such a keen sense. You shouldn't only be wary of your servant. Do you also need to be wary of the master?" Noah's eyebrows suddenly raised. This archer directly said such a sentence in front of him. Wasn't it a bit too arrogant? "I don't need you to remind me, archer." Rin and Osaka was still staring at Noah. "Then, isn't it time for your servant to show his face?" Hearing Rin and Osaka's words, Noah smirked. "Since he has asked for it, Ryder, come out and show yourself." As soon as he finished speaking, a faint blue mist appeared behind Noah's back, exposing Ryder's figure to the air and entering Rin Enbin and Archer's sight. Ryder's servant? Archer turned to look at Ryder. Seems like a hero spirit with quite a strong background. Rin and Osaka did not say anything. Like Noah, he directly used his authority as a master to check Ryder's ability value. Of course, Rin and Osaka wasn't like Noah, who was able to see the servant's class and skills clearly. However, as a master, it was not a problem for him to see the basic value of the ability value. Therefore, Rin Hasaka clearly saw Ryder's ability value, and his expression changed. Strength and durability are grade B, agility is grade A, luck and relic are grade A+, and mana is grade A+? Even the lowest is grade B? What's going on? That servant. Ryder's strength was obviously beyond Rin and Osaka's expectations. Even Archer was a little speechless. I thought that the most outstanding magician in this Holy Grail war would be Ling. Was I wrong? No, if it's just magic, I might not even be able to compete with a normal magician, let alone the heir of the Enosaka family who is in charge of this land, Noah said bluntly. As a magician, I'm not qualified. But in terms of mana, I don't think there's any magician better than me, right? You don't have to tell me that. Rin Enosaka subconsciously raised his hand like a gun and pointed it at Noah. He gathered some mana at the tip of his finger. With such a level of mana, why are you still thinking about Sakura? Rin Enosaka thought that Noah was trying to get close to Sakura so that his servant could collect mana from ordinary people. If it's as you said, with such a level of mana, why would I still think about Sakura? Noah crossed his arms and asked. I don't care if you believe me or not, but I'm going to say this for the last time. My meeting with Xiao Ying was a coincidence. I do care about her, but it's not to the point where I have bad intentions. Don't try to apply the rules of a magician to me. I've said it before, as a magician, I'm not qualified. Right now, the only magic I can use are limited to two, and they're just the simple magic bullet and the most basic enhancement. What are you doing? Rin Enosaka was shocked. You actually revealed your abilities to your enemy? Are you crazy? Well, if it's only the magician part, it's fine even if I reveal it. Noah looked at Rin Enosaka with a half-smile. Or are you saying that only the magician part of the game can be used in battle? Rin Enosaka was speechless. Whether it's demeanor, ability, or style, they're all quite surprising. Archer spread his hands and said sarcastically, Rin, it's a pity. Even if he's not a magician, as a master, he's a formidable opponent. I already said, I know that even if you don't say it. Rin Enbin said hatefully. He gathered mana on his fingertip and pointed it at Noah. He took a deep breath and asked. He took a deep breath and said, Then, Rider's master, do you want to fight me here? Are you sure? Noah sighed. It's a pity, but I have to tell you that you can't win against me. Rin Enosaka's eyes twitched. Even Archer narrowed his eyes. You're that confident that I'm not a match for Ryder? I'm not sure if you're a match for Ryder, Noah said calmly. But while you're fighting Ryder, I'll take care of your master. I'm sure of that. The corners of Rin Enbin's mouth twitched, and even his body trembled slightly. He closed his eyes and suppressed the anger in his heart as he spoke in a low voice. I should have thought of that. You've been so confident since the beginning. I'm such an idiot for talking to you. No, you should be glad that you talked to me. At least you know the truth. Noah shrugged. Right? You must think that I'm just being confident. I won't deny it. I just want to say that as long as you're a magician, you can't win against me. It's up to you to believe it or not. As long as I'm a magician, I can't win against you? Rin and Osaka frowned. Not to mention Rin and Osaka, even Archer, who had been observing Noah, frowned. He doesn't look like he's lying, and there's no need for that. Did he prepare a method that only works on magicians? I've already revealed enough information to you, so you can figure out the rest yourselves. Noah said in a tone that seemed to be both true and false. It was as if he was deliberately mystifying things, but at the same time, it was as if he was really serious. What do you think? Do you still want to decide the winner here? Rin and Osaka looked at Noah's confident expression. He didn't know whether Noah was deliberately mystifying or not. He gritted his teeth. You mean if we don't want to, you'll let us go? Not really. After all, I have my own goals. I need to witness this Holy Grail war. Noah said. However, if he were to fight with you here, that kid who finally gained a little confidence would probably have to worry about something else, right? This time, Rin and Osaka was silent. It was obvious that Rin and Osaka had the same concerns as Noah. At this moment, a giggle that sounded like a silver bell rang out. Then, why don't you play with me? Chapter 719. Then, why don't you play with me? As the clear and melodious voice that sounded like a silver bell rang, everyone, led by Noah, tensed up and turned their heads abruptly to look into the depths of the forest. Who is it? Because of Noah, Rin Enbin was filled with anger, and his tone became rather nasty. Don't hide, since you're here, come out. Allah, so scary. The bell-like voice sounded with a hint of laughter. The heir of the Enbin family is so uncultured, how disappointing. Saying such a sentence, a footstep stepped on the leaves, causing a rustling sound to be heard as it slowly approached, little by little. There was only one footstep. However, Noah, with his sharp senses, could sense that there was an unusually dangerous aura beside the footsteps. That aura could no longer be described by humans. It was like a ferocious beast, full of ruthlessness, causing Noah to frown. Then, in the depths of the forest, a petite figure slowly walked into everyone's vision, revealing her full appearance under the illumination of the setting sun. Seeing the owner of the voice, both Noah and Rin Enbin were stunned. This was because the newcomer was an unexpected presence. A slight breeze swept through the forest, blowing up the leaves and dust. It also blew up the long hair that was as white as snow and as beautiful as Mercury. She was wearing a snow jacket and a snow hat on her head. She was less than 1.5 meters tall and looked like a 13 or 14-year-old girl. Traces of her immaturity could be seen everywhere. At first glance, she looked like a fairy in the snow. This little girl stepped on the decaying leaves and withered branches, slowly walking out from the depths of the forest. She was like a playful little girl, with her hands behind her back, leaning sideways and bending over, with a very cute smile on her face. She spoke to Noah and Rin Enbin in a crisp voice. How are you? It had to be said that this girl was indeed a very cute little fairy. However, the moment he saw this cute girl, Noah's frown deepened, and even Rin Enbin's face tensed up, his expression rather solemn. There was no other reason. It was because both Noah and Rin Enbin could sense a very sinister aura from this naive girl. Noah even sensed it. There was a trace of blood on this girl's body. It was obvious that she was not as innocent as her appearance and words made her seem. Apart from that, there were traces of magic around the girl's body, proving that she wasn't an ordinary person. Tisse? Rin Enbin clicked his tongue. Master? That's right. The girl smiled sweetly, lifting her skirt and bowed slightly. I am Elia Fischer von Erzbrun. Erzbrun? Rin Enbin's expression became even more frightening. Erzbrun? Noah's heart skipped a beat. The Erzbrun of the 3 magic families that established this Holy Grail war ritual? Oh? The big brother over there seems to know it very well. The girl named Elia looked curiously at Noah. Although I haven't seen Rin, I've heard of him. I don't know this big brother. Or you. After saying that, Elia seemed to be amused by her own question and showed a cute smile, but the words that came out of her mouth were terrifying. Well, forget it. Anyway, I don't know where this master came from. Since it's a master, then let's kill them together. Turning around, Ilya unguardedly exposed her back to Noah's group. Soon after, she called out, "Come out, Berserker." As soon as she finished speaking, a dense blue mist appeared behind Ilya. Then, compared to the surprise that Ilya's overly young appearance had brought to Noah's group, a figure that was the complete opposite of the extreme appeared. He was at least 2 meters tall and had messy black hair. His muscles were quite taut, and his body was very strong. He wore an armor battle skirt and held a ferocious-looking axe in his hand. His upper body was exposed, and he was barefooted. With the appearance of this burly man, the beast-like violent aura that Noah had just sensed also spread out from him, instantly covering the entire forest. Noah and Rin Enben's eyes focused at the same time, and a faint light appeared in their eyes. The next moment, the ability value of the Berserker servant was presented in different degrees in front of Noah and Rin Enben. Rin Enben could only see the Berserker's ability value. Noah, on the other hand, obtained all the information of the Berserker except for the noble phantasm. Thus, a list of ability values appeared in Noah's mind. Job rank, Berserker Master, Elia Fischer von Erzbrunn. Real name? Attribute, Chaos, Fury. Ability value, Strength, A+. Durability, Agility, A. Magic power, A. Luck, B. Noble phantasm, A. Job rank. Skill, Fury, B. Ace. The price to pay for losing his rationality, Berserker's job rank skill is given. Level B. In the case of losing half of his rationality, all of his ability values are increased. Preservation skill, Battle continuation. 8 was a skill that allowed a person to continue fighting even when they were on the brink of death. Furthermore, the death rate of the injured person would also decrease. This represented the ability to survive because even if the person died, they would be revived with the help of the relic. It was extremely compatible with the battle that made it difficult for the person to die. This was the best effect brought about by the combination of a strong body and this skill. Mind's Eye, Fake B. The ability to avoid danger was honed through many difficult adventures, based on intuition and sixth sense. Even if one's rationality was taken away due to berserk, this ability that was close to instinct was still effective. When fighting against opponents with rich combat skills and battle experience, one wouldn't be deceived by half-baked feints, so this was a very troublesome ability for the opponent. Furthermore, even though he was a giant, his agility was also at the highest level, so even chasing after him would be very difficult. Bravery. A plus with the spirit of bravery, he will not be able to use mental interference skills such as coercion, confusion, and confusion. However, as long as he is in the fury state, the effect of the skill will not be used. When the effect is used correctly, it can also increase the damage to the enemy. With this, he can defeat many monsters with his bare hands. Unfortunately, even the bravery warrior's heart was destroyed due to the fury state. Divinity. Ace, the hybrid of the main god and human in Greek mythology, he will be welcomed after death and become a real god. Therefore, he has the highest level of divinity skills as a servant. When the data of the ability value was fed back, even Noah's face gradually became serious. Is this a lie? Noah did not need to look at the source of the voice. He knew that the trembling voice must be from Rin Enben, who saw Berserker's ability value. Although there was no way to see Berserker's class and skills, Rin Enben must have seen Berserker's ability value. Strength, durability, agility, magic, and noble phantasm. Other than luck, which was level B, the rest were all level A, the highest level. Strength was even level A+. Was there any ability value more ridiculous than this? Not only did we have a guy with A++ mana, but now we have a servant with the highest level in all abilities. There should be a limit to this joke, right? Rin Enben's voice was raised unconsciously. Is there anyone weaker than my Archer in this Holy Grail war? I'm sorry. Archer looked at Berserker solemnly and said in a deep voice, "Don't worry, Berserker. However, although it's not appropriate for me to say this, Rin, it's better to retreat here." Retreat? That won't do. Ilya's innocent voice sounded. Because I'm going to kill. Chapter 720. A murderous atmosphere filled the forest under the setting sun, giving Rin Enbin and Archer a lot of pressure. Looking at Berserker, who was guarding Ilya like an iron tower, Noah said to Ryder, who was beside him, "What do you think?" Ryder. Of course, he was asking Ryder if he had the confidence to deal with this Berserker. And as usual, Ryder answered Noah's question in an extremely simple and concise manner with a taciturn manner. If you use all your skills and noble phantoms, you can try. In other words, if Ryder didn't use all his skills and noble phantoms, he definitely wouldn't be a match for the Iron Tower. This answer was also within Noah's expectations. After all, Berserker's ability value was too ridiculous. The so-called rank of Berserker was, in fact, a rank that could only be held by heroes who had gone crazy in battle. A servant was just a clone of a hero spirit that was outside the world. Therefore, under normal circumstances, it would be ideal for a servant to be able to unleash the full potential of their heroic spirit body. In other words, the full potential of their heroic spirit body. However, Berserker's rank would break this ideal state. Berserker's rank would strengthen the servant by using the skill of Berserker's rank. If a strong hero spirit became a Berserker, it was very likely that it would be strengthened beyond the hero spirit's original strength. As such, this job rank was usually used to strengthen weak heroic spirits. However, even if one was stupid, after seeing the ability value of the Iron Tower in front of them, they wouldn't think that he was a weak hero spirit. On the contrary, he should be at the highest level among all hero spirits. Such an existence was strengthened by Berserker's rank. Noah didn't know if he had really surpassed the hero spirit's original strength. What Noah knew was that in terms of ability value, Berserker was definitely the strongest hero in this Holy Grail war. If it weren't for Berserker's ability, Berserker's mana consumption would increase regardless of whether it was maintaining the current world or fighting. It would be a huge burden to the Master, and it might even cause the Master to die due to mana depletion. In addition, because of Berserker's Noble Phantom's ability might also be affected, it would really be impossible to fight with such a guy. The only fortunate thing was that this Berserker didn't have any Noble Phantoms or Noble Phantoms. Therefore, Noah, who could transform into a mobile cannon, should be able to suppress this guy. In addition, Ryder would be assisting him. Victory wasn't an extravagant hope. Noah took a step forward and said to Rin Enbin without turning his head, "It's up to you whether you want to fight or run. If you want to run, now is the time. If you want to fight, then remember, don't drag me down." Seeing that Noah didn't retreat and chose to face such a monster without fear, Rin Enbin and Archer were stunned. Then each of them reacted differently. "I've underestimated your demeanor and courage." Archer, who had been making sarcastic remarks since the beginning, admired Lin Huang from the bottom of his heart. "With such demeanor and courage, there's no doubt that you're a hero. If you're given some time, I guess your achievements won't be any lower than the average hero spirit, right? Although I won't force myself, I won't think that running away is embarrassing. Running away is also a strategic choice." Rin Enbin took a deep breath and stepped forward. "However, we have 2 servants here, and there's only 1 enemy. If I don't try and run away, then I'll be ashamed of the Enbin family's reputation. Did you hear that? The young lady over there?" Noah smirked. "That's why we're going to start killing. It's very dangerous over there, so hurry and run away." "Big brother, are you worried about me?" Ilya was stunned for a moment, but then she smiled happily. "What a gentle big brother. Then I'll be extra gentle and let Berserker kill you." After saying that, Ilya's tender voice sounded without the slightest trace of emotion. "Kill Berserker." After saying that, the Iron Tower-like man suddenly raised his head, and a fierce aura burst out from his body. Roar! In the midst of a beast-like roar, the atmosphere of mutual hostility suddenly exploded. Berserker's eyes were filled with a dense murderous light. His huge arms grabbed the ferocious axe and fiercely stomped his feet on the ground, causing the entire forest to tremble. Then, with the help of the powerful thrust, Berserker charged out like a giant black cannon. In the blink of an eye, he appeared in front of Noah, who was standing at the front. Whoosh! Berserker's ferocious aura rapidly rose from the axe and sword in Berserker's hands, bringing about ear-piercing whistling sounds. It was like a huge club, and in the blink of an eye, it turned into a black shadow and directly chopped down on Noah's head. Such a ruthless attack was completely compatible with the name Berserker. Whoosh! Berserker's bangs were blown into a mess by the axe and sword. Facing the deadly ferocious axe and sword, Noah's expression didn't change. He didn't move at all, as if he was frightened and stood in place. Of course, that wasn't because Noah was arrogant enough to think that he didn't need to defend against this terrifying attack. It was just that someone bravely stepped forward, and with agility not inferior to Berserker, suddenly appeared in front of Noah. Ding 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 ding. The sound of chains clanging echoed in the air. Ryder, who had rushed in front of Noah, fiercely swung the sharp chain dagger in his hand, and instantly activated the monstrous strength skill, causing the sharp dagger to tear through the air, making a sharp sound as it met Berserker's axe and sword head-on. Clang! The chain dagger and the ferocious axe fiercely clashed together, causing a loud sound and sparks to fly everywhere. With the help of the monstrous strength skill, Ryder was able to block Berserker's powerful attack. However, Ryder wasn't the type that was good at close combat, and the monstrous strength skill also had a duration. Bang! In the midst of the explosion, Ryder, who only felt a terrifying force from the chain dagger, was forced to kneel down by the ferocious axe and sword, causing the ground to explode into pieces. He actually went head-on? Rin, who finally reacted, said, "Archer." Archer didn't need Rin Tozaka's reminder. He leaped onto the top of a tall tree. Mana surged in his hands, and a black longbow appeared in his hands. The longbow looked like it was made of iron and wood. "If I go head-on, it won't take long for me to be sent flying, right?" Archer calmly raised the bow in his hand. Vigorous mana emerged from his body and turned into an arrow in his other hand. Then he knocked it on the bow. "So, I'll be responsible for the firepower output. Ryder, remember to avoid it, I won't remind you." After saying that, dense magic gathered at the tip of Archer's arrow, and traces of electricity appeared in the air. Feeling the power brewing behind him, Ryder, who was half kneeling on the broken ground, suddenly raised his head, and once again activated the monstrous strength skill. In the midst of the sound, the chain dagger madly rubbed against the ferocious axe, causing violent sparks, and at the same time, Ryder struggled to support his body. Roar! Berserker seemed to have felt the magic power that was gathering around him. He let out a roar, and the veins on his sturdy arm that was holding the ferocious axe were bulging. He suddenly pressed Ryder down again. That scene could only be described with one sentence: extremely barbaric. Chapter 721. Although Ryder's strength didn't reach the highest level of A, with the help of the monstrous strength skill, he could still reach a level in a very short time. However, Berserker's strength was at A+ level. Under normal circumstances, he was almost on par with Ryder when he used the monstrous strength skill. However, once the plus effect appeared, even if he used the monstrous strength skill to increase his strength to a level, he still wouldn't be able to defeat Berserker. Clang! With a crisp sound of collision, Ryder was sent flying by Berserker along with his chain dagger. Roar! After forcing Ryder to retreat, Berserker's feet fiercely stomped on the ground. His tower-like figure burst into the sky, and in a flash, he appeared in front of Archer, who was standing on top of a tree. His eyes were filled with ruthlessness, and his ferocious axe was directly aimed at Archer's head. Looking at the situation, if Archer was hit, even if he was a servant, his brain would be splattered everywhere. Ha! However, at this moment, Archer let out a cold roar. Wang! As soon as Archer finished his words, the wind in the entire forest seemed to have solidified. Then a strong gust of wind blew. A strong magical force mixed with the wind rapidly condensed at the tip of Archer's arrow that was aimed at Berserker. In the blink of an eye, the arrow had completely condensed. Finally, it tore through the air, and with a sharp sound, it hovered in the air. Whoosh! The arrow that contained an extremely tyrannical magical force shot down from the air. Its speed was somewhat terrifying. On the surface of the arrow was a whirlwind, as if it was condensed by the wind. Like a meteor, it pierced through the air and shot towards Berserker's direction. Because Berserker had soared into the sky, he had nowhere to borrow strength. Facing such an attack, he naturally couldn't dodge it as easily as if he was on the ground. Roar! Berserker could only open his mouth and let out a low roar. A circle of dense magical force rushed out from his body like lightning. Finally, it condensed on Berserker's axe. Berserker swung it heavily to meet the incoming meteor-like arrow. The sharp sound of the wind instantly arrived. Boom! In midair, a loud bang reverberated, bringing about a burst of violent flames and shockwaves, causing the surrounding trees to tremble and leaves to be blown away crazily. Noah clearly saw that the explosion wasn't caused by the collision between Berserker and Archer's attack. Instead, it was caused by Archer's arrow exploding the moment it came into contact with Berserker's axe. Suddenly, in the air, a huge figure with smoke coming out of its body rapidly fell from the flames and heavily smashed into the rocks not far away. Like a cannonball, it blasted a huge crater with a diameter of more than 10 meters in the ground, causing smoke and dust to fill the air. Looking at the gradually spreading smoke and dust, Noah waved his hand, and a gust of mana stirred up a strong gale that blew away the smoke and dust. As the smoke and dust gradually dispersed, the huge crater appeared in everyone's sight. However, because the crater was rather deep, everyone could only see a faint darkness and cracks spreading around the crater. Rin Enbin's voice was filled with nervousness. Did it work? No one answered Rin Enbin's question. Noah's eyes suddenly turned cold as he stared at the deep crater. In the crater, there seemed to be a faint, strange magical force that was faintly emitted. Sure enough, it's not that simple. Noah's words made the faces of the others turn solemn. Mana emerged from their bodies one by one, enveloping their bodies. From afar, it looked as if there were a few figures that were emitting flames all over their bodies. This silence lasted for about a minute. As time passed, the strange magical force in the black hole became stronger and stronger. In the end, it was as thick as the air, causing Rin Enbin to feel uneasy. Boom! Just as Rin Enbin was feeling uneasy, suddenly an explosive sound came from the crater. Everyone's heart couldn't help but tighten. However, before everyone's tense nerves could collapse, an extremely blurry black glow flashed out from within the pit. Its speed was so frightening that it left one speechless. It caused everyone to be stunned for an instant under that frightening speed. Soon after, their expressions changed drastically as they scattered in all directions like rabbits. At this moment, the blurry black light soared into the sky and appeared in front of Archer, who was also retreating. Archer didn't even get a clear look at the other party's appearance. He felt an extremely violent gust of wind in front of him that tore through the air and ruthlessly smashed towards him. Feeling the violent and dangerous gust of wind, Archer subconsciously raised the longbow in his hand. In the next moment, the heavy blow that tore through the air exploded on Archer's longbow. The force of the blow passed through the longbow and mercilessly bombarded Archer's body. Archer let out a painful groan as his body was heavily hit. Like a kite with a broken string, he flew into the depths of the forest. Archer! Rin Enbin's face turned pale as he yelled. And this yell seemed to have attracted all the danger, causing the iron tower-like figure to look at Rin Enbin with a pair of ruthless eyes. What? A low roar filled with violent killing intent echoed throughout the forest. Immediately, Berserker, who had turned into a blurry black shadow, rushed out in Rin Enbin's direction. On the ground, Rin Enbin also noticed the black shadow that was rushing towards them. Her delicate face suddenly turned pale. At this time, Rin Enbin should be running, right? However, Rin Enbin couldn't escape at all. Even Servant couldn't escape in front of Berserker's speed. He could barely raise his longbow and block an attack. Even if an ordinary person, even if a magician, could react in time and turn around to escape, they would only be exposing their unguarded back to the opponent and be killed on the spot. If they went all out, perhaps there was an extremely small chance of survival. As these thoughts flashed through Rin Enbin's mind, She quickly suppressed the panic in her heart to prevent herself from panicking. She clenched her delicate hand, and a few gemstones appeared in her hand. Unfortunately, before Rin Enbin could gather his mana, the blurry shadow appeared in front of him. A ferocious face filled with savagery appeared in Rin Enbin's gem-like eyes. Roar! A roar filled with murderous intent resounded through the sky. The ferocious axe, which was even fiercer than when he was chasing after Archer, tore through the air and smashed towards Rin Enbin. Rin Enbin gritted her teeth in the face of this fatal attack. Her eyes and face didn't show any signs of giving up. Instead, she stubbornly stared at Berserker's figure that filled her vision and raised her hand in an attempt to make a last stand. The ferocious axe didn't slow down at all because of this scene. It was still ruthlessly smashing towards Rin Enbin's direction. However, just as the ferocious axe and sword were about to collide with Rin Enbin's head, another black shadow suddenly flashed through the air with a muffled thunder-like explosion. Following the flash of that black shadow, the axe and sword that were accompanied by a fierce gust of wind hit nothing but air. Rin Enbin, who was supposed to be there, disappeared without a trace, and the axe fell to the ground. Bang! The ground was directly smashed and a crater was formed. At this moment, the black shadow that flashed by suddenly appeared on top of a nearby tree. Rin Enbin, who had disappeared, was lying in the other's arms, protected in the other's embrace. Chapter 722. The entire place fell silent. Not far away, Ilya, who had been smiling all this time, frowned slightly. She was like a child who was playing a game and was suddenly rudely asked to stop. Her face was filled with displeasure. On the top of the tree, Noah lowered his head and looked at Rin Enbin in his arms, who didn't seem to be able to react, and said softly, "Hey Rin Enbin, are you okay?" Hearing Noah's voice, Rin Hizaka's frightened eyes finally trembled, and he murmured as if he was in a dream. "You saved me?" "Nonsense, if it wasn't me who saved you, then who saved you?" Noah sighed and let go of Rin Enbin. He let Rin Enbin sit up straight on the top of the tree, then he turned his head and looked at Berserker, who smashed the ground with his sword. His eyes flashed with a hint of seriousness. "Although I knew that the ability value was exaggerated, I didn't expect there to be something even more exaggerated." Rin Enbin was startled. He followed Noah's gaze and looked over. When he saw Berserker's current situation, he understood why Noah said that. This was because, at this very moment, on Berserker's pitch-black tower-like body, his bulging muscles were actually glowing with a red light like a burning iron. This caused Berserker's entire body to be shrouded in a murderous and ruthless aura. Waves of smoke-like red mist continuously seeped out from his body like steam, emitting chi sounds. "What's that?" Rin Enbin was shocked. "I don't know." Noah stared at Berserker and replied. However, Archer's attack didn't cause any damage to him. "I did see that he was injured, but now, the injury seems to be recovering rapidly. If I'm not wrong, it should be his noble phantasm." Only Noah could see that Berserker had an A-level battle skill. However, it was different from Lancer's battle skill as it represented the ability to survive. Noah clearly saw the sentence, "Because even if you die, you will be revived with the help of the noble phantasm that can revive you." In other words, Berserker had a noble phantasm that could revive. He was already ridiculously strong, but he could revive? Even Noah felt that it was troublesome. There's a noble phantasm with that kind of effect? Even Noah felt troubled, let alone Rin Enbin. He already has such an exaggerated ability value, but he can still recover. How can he fight? That's right. Big Brother and Ling won't be able to defeat Berserker. No, it should be said that no one can defeat Berserker, Ilya said happily. If you want to know why, Berserker's real identity is Hercules from Greece. Hearing this, no matter who it was, everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. Hercules. They believed that as long as they had a little understanding of mythology, it was impossible for them not to know this name. He was the greatest hero in Greek mythology and was also the son of the main god Zeus, also known as Hercules. He was extremely brave and powerful. Later, He even completed 12 tasks that even the gods said were impossible to complete. After his death, he ascended to the Mount Olympus and became Hercules. Mythical stories about Hercules punishing evil and encouraging good and daring to fight had always been a theme that writers and artists liked to express. In the Western world, the word Hercules had also become a synonym for Hercules and a strong man. It was used to describe a hero with infinite strength and incomparable courage. As a heroic spirit, it was definitely at the highest level. Also, let me reveal a piece of news to you. Ilya seemed to like Noah and the others, as she said with a smile. Berserker's noble phantasm is called the 12 Trials, God's Hand. It is a noble phantasm that represents immortality. With that noble phantasm, Berserker can nullify all attacks below grade B. He can also revive 11 times. So, if you don't kill Berserker 12 times, Berserker won't be destroyed. Oh, by the way, this noble phantasm has a third effect. As long as it is attacked once, it won't work a second time. Even if you use the noble phantasm to defeat Berserker once, when he revives, that noble phantasm will be useless. This news made Rin Enbin's heart turn cold. It even made Noah speechless. Nullify all attacks below grade B? Revive 11 times? After being attacked once, it won't work a second time? Not to mention the effect of a single noble phantasm. Even if it was split into 3 noble phantasms, it would be more than enough. Legend had it that Hercules had indeed completed 12 impossible missions, thus becoming a great hero and the god of strength. Now, that battle record had been upgraded to Hercules' noble phantasm. It made this chariot that only existed to charge and break through enemy lines completely become an existence that could charge and break through enemy lines without being shot down. For the enemy, that was simply a despairing fact. Although Noah didn't despair, the idea that he and Ryder could defeat Berserker had disappeared. Even if they could defeat Berserker once, when he stood up for the second time, Noah wouldn't be able to use the same method to defeat him. After all, if he didn't use authority, Noah's means were limited. How is it? My Berserker is very powerful, right? Ilya innocently said such a sentence. That's why you should quickly give up resisting and be killed by Berserker. After saying that, Berserker, the great hero of Greek mythology, let out a roar. His huge body was like a missile, directly rushing towards Noah and Rin Enbin's direction. The sharp sound of wind breaking rang out in the forest. However, although Berserker's speed was extremely fast, Noah's senses were not ordinary. Almost at the instant Berserker moved, he reacted. His eyes flashed, and he extended his hand towards Berserker's direction. Wang! Dense magic surged, causing a beautiful magic formation to suddenly spin out. It was like a cannon, aiming at Berserker who was rushing towards him. Before Berserker could charge in front of Noah, the light from the magic formation turned into a beam of dense magic. It fell from the sky, rubbing against the air, and heavily landed on Berserker's body. Boom! A force more powerful than Archer's attack exploded, setting off violent flames and shockwaves that covered the entire forest. Berserker's smoking huge body was blown away and smashed into a mountain wall in the distance. Bang! A large part of the hard mountain wall caved in under Berserker's heavy smashing. Cracks spread out like a spider web, spreading almost half of the mountain. After suffering such a heavy blow, Berserker was enraged. His whole body glowed with a bright red light, and his injuries healed at an extremely fast speed. Surging magic power condensed on the surface of his body, causing the surrounding air to become scorching hot. Suddenly, the magic power converged. In the next second, Berserker, who had transformed into a missile, suddenly shot out with a terrifying force, causing the atmosphere to become chaotic. His target was Noah, who was at the top of the tree. Suddenly, Berserker, who was like a missile, left behind a long light red trace in the air. Noah's deep eyes gazed at Berserker, who was rushing towards him. After a while, his magic suddenly burst out, like another sun under the setting sun, emitting a dazzling magic wave. In the end, the charging mountain of flesh crashed into the sun. Boom! The sound of the explosion resounded like thunder. Chapter 7:23. The sky gradually began to darken. However, in the forest, the fierce battle continued. Roar! In the forest that was gradually sinking into the darkness of the moonlit night, an extremely ruthless roar reverberated throughout the entire forest. It was as if a ferocious beast from ancient times was rioting, causing people to feel fear. Whoosh! In the woods, a whistling sound of wind accompanied the brandishing of a ferocious axe and sword. The ferocious axe and sword, which were as frightening as a chainsaw, flashed through the air like the shadow of death and ruthlessly swung toward Noah, who was standing on the treetop. Seeing Berserker swinging his deadly axe and shooting towards him like a missile, Noah narrowed his eyes. He stretched out his hand and pushed away Rin Enbin, who had yet to react. After distancing himself from Noah, the magic power on his body was denser than anyone else's. It was like a flame slowly burning on Noah's body. Hum! Suddenly, Noah's body trembled. On every part of his body, the magic lines that looked like electric wires shone with a dazzling luster. They gradually spread and covered Noah's limbs except for his head and torso. The heroic spirit, whose real name was Hercules, also had the Berserker's unique berserk ability. Even if it was just a servant, Noah had to go all out without using his authority. As a result, under the strengthening of enhanced magic, the power of Noah's limbs, which were covered by the magic lines, soared, making Noah feel that his arm and leg strength had been greatly increased. Noah had told Rin Enbin that he was an unqualified magician. But in fact, in terms of magic attainment, Noah was no worse than those self-proclaimed magicians. Don't forget, Noah had almost an entire system of Runi's magic, which was Runi's magic. How could he be worse than those pretentious magicians? However, Noah's Runi's magic had turned into the ability of the priest incarnation. It had completely broken away from the category of magic and became a power that could only be involved in the domain of God. Thus, Noah's magic was only left with a simple processing and a basic enhancement. However, as the saying goes, it's better to be knowledgeable than to be proficient. Although the magic spells that Noah could use now were the most basic magic spells, the magic bullet had already been upgraded into a magic cannon due to Noah's vast magic power. The strengthening magic had also been greatly enhanced due to Noah's excessively powerful magic power. Even if it was still slightly inferior to the physical ability of the Dragon Emperor incarnation that was comparable to a giant dragon, and even more inferior to the terrifying strength of the giant incarnation, but with the enhancement of enhanced magic, coupled with Noah's already good physical ability, it still allowed Noah to obtain physical strength that was beyond the human category. Noah did not dare to say that with the enhancement of enhanced magic, he would be able to compete with Berserker's terrifying strength. However, according to the value of the servant's ability value, after the enhancement of enhanced magic, Noah's strength could be compared to the highest level of a class. After the enhancement of his leg strength, Noah's agility could also be comparable to that of an A class. In this case, it was not impossible to compete with Berserker, who was good at close combat. At that moment, beautiful magic lines suddenly spread out from Noah's limbs, making Noah feel that his limbs were full of strength. With a bright look in his eyes, Noah clenched a fist, like a bow, and fiercely pulled it behind his back. Whang! The next moment, with the sound of the air vibrating, Noah's fist also surged with a brilliant golden vortex, covering Noah's entire fist. It was the annihilation strike that Noah had been using for a long time. Just now, in order to save Rin and Osaka, who was targeted by Berserker, Noah also used the leap forward that he had not used for a long time. Originally, Annihilation Strike and Leap Forward were completely useless after Noah obtained the authority of the Giant and Phoenix. But now, in the situation where Noah restrained himself from using the authority, these two combat skills were reused. With the enhancement of Enhanced Magic and the technique of Annihilation Strike, Noah's heart shook. As if he was holding a brilliant golden vortex, his fist directly blasted out, and actually directly collided with the ferocious axe that violently swung towards him. Bang! As soon as the two collided, a terrible turbulence burst out, causing the wind to violently surge. Noah only felt a terrible force passing through his fist, causing his whole body to shake, and Noah was sent flying. Bang! The tree that Noah was on seemed to disintegrate and suddenly burst open. As a result, even with the enhancement of enhanced magic and the technique of annihilation strike, Noah was still unable to match Berserker, who had a strength value of A+. However, even so, Berserker's huge ferocious axe was forced back by Noah's punch. What? Seeing this scene with his own eyes, Rin and Osaka, who was pushed down from the top of the tree by Noah and awkwardly rolled on the ground, was stunned. Liar. Not to mention Rin and Osaka, even Ilya was shocked, her pair of eyes opened to the maximum. Roar. Berserker still let out a violent and murderous roar, and his huge body once again shot out like a missile, directly towards Noah, who was sent flying backwards. That speed was worthy of the highest level of agility, a grade. He swept towards Noah's direction like lightning. The huge axe fiercely swung out. It brought a terrible explosion, turning into a terrifying windstorm, and heavily fell on Noah's body. In a hurry, Noah, who was still flying backwards in the air, could only raise his hands and cross them above his head. Bang! Berserker's merciless attack directly hit Noah's raised arms, creating a shockwave, and chopped Noah down from the air. However, Noah was not someone who would only suffer losses. Although it was not as shocking as when he used the Dragon Emperor transformation and obtained a divine skill that far surpassed his instincts and wildness, Noah had trained his combat skills since he was young, and had even digested various combat skills in various worlds, so his skills were not bad. After being chopped to the ground by Berserker's sword, Noah's eyes flashed with a fierce light, and with a turn of his body, one of his legs turned into a black shadow like a wild whip, suddenly swinging over and whipping Berserker's body as fast as lightning. Dong! The violent whip leg heavily smashed into Berserker's waist, directly exploding out with a muffled sound, and Berserker's huge body was sent flying. Suddenly, in mid-air, one big and one small figure turned into a blurry afterimage. One heavily smashed into the ground, and the other was sent flying like an arrow released from a bow. Bang! Smoke and dust rose from the ground, and cracks appeared everywhere. Pa 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 pa. Berserker, who was sent flying, smashed dozens of trees along the way, and finally, the trunk of a huge tree broke in the middle, and he slid down from above. However, almost at the same time when the ground was smashed to the point where smoke and dust rose in all directions, and the trees were smashed apart one by one, the two figures, one big and one small, shot out explosively. One charged forward like a chariot, while the other had a whirlpool-like gorgeous airflow under her feet as she swiftly shot out and heavily collided with each other. Bang 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 bang. The giant holding the ferocious axe and sword and the fist covered in the whirlpool-like airflow bombarded each other, causing deafening muffled sounds. Roar! The berserk roar continued to sound. Ha! A cold and stern voice echoed in the air. The two figures, one big and one small, collided head-on with each other in the most violent manner, causing the ground to crack inch by inch and the air to explode sharply. The scene was shocking. Rin and Osaka and Ilya were completely dumbfounded. Therefore, the two didn't notice. Noah has always been the one who has been forced back in the face of the violent bombardment. Chapter 724. Pang! It was another violent clash, causing a muffled sound that made people's hearts shrink. Waves of wind blew in all directions. Under the ferocious attack of the axe and sword, even with the annihilation strike technique, Noah seemed to be wearing a sturdy gauntlet. He was not cut open by the axe and sword. However, from the huge axe and sword, the terrifying strength of the A+ level was transmitted to Noah's body. It made Noah feel as if he was hitting a wall made of steel, and he was constantly pushed back. Pang! When he was pushed back, his feet directly stepped on the ground and exploded. It was as if a small bomb had exploded, creating a small crater. The crater was surrounded by cracks, like a spider web. Even so, Noah still resisted the numbness from his fists and the terrifying strength from the axe and continued to attack Berserker. In other people's eyes, Noah and Berserker were fighting head-on like savages. However, only Noah knew that Berserker was not just blindly swinging his sword and relying on brute force to suppress his opponent. At least, in Noah's eyes, Berserker's huge and ferocious axe and sword were like a windmill that was swinging from all directions. Every swing followed the most mysterious, shortest, and most difficult to defend against. This kind of technique, a person who had completely fallen into madness would not be able to use it. That is to say, even if he had gone berserk as a great hero in Greek mythology, the sword skills of the god of strength were still engraved on his body. It was like his instinct, even if he had gone berserk, he would still be able to use it. Therefore, Noah was not only facing a giant with astonishing brute force, but also a hero with superb sword skills. In this kind of situation, to be able to follow Berserker's sword attacks and accurately clash with Berserker's sword was enough to show that Noah's fighting skills were not ordinary. Unfortunately, Noah was still at a disadvantage. Even with the enhanced magic and the annihilation strike technique, Noah's strength was still not as good as the A+ level Berserker. In terms of combat skills, as the great hero who had completed 12 impossible tasks in Greek mythology, the knowledge that he had learned in his life was naturally better than the combat skills that Noah had diligently practiced for less than 20 years. His strength was not comparable. His technique was not comparable. How could Noah not be at a disadvantage? There was only one thing that Noah had an advantage. That is, Noah was calm and rational. Berserker, on the other hand, was in a berserk state. Therefore, Noah was waiting for Berserker to reveal a flaw. Peng Peng. Under such circumstances, the ruthless and malevolent axe and the fist that was covered with a vortex of air continued to clash against each other. Waves of violent wind and gales shook out, causing the surrounding leaves that were scattered all over the ground to flutter back and forth, pervading the entire forest. After a while, Rin Enbin and Ilya finally recovered from the shock. They could see who had the advantage between Noah and Berserker. It's useless. Ilya only had eyes for Noah as she stared at Noah who was fighting with Berserker. My Berserker is the strongest, no one can defeat him. This isn't good. Rin and Osaka's expression also became gloomy. If this continues, that guy will not be able to hold on. Just as this thought flashed through Rin Enbin's mind, a weak voice echoed in his mind. Rin, are you okay? Archer? Rin Enbin was stunned, then he was delighted. Idiot, I should be the one saying that. I'm fine, but I took a direct hit from Berserker. My head is dizzy, and I won't be able to stand up for a while. Archer forcefully pulled himself together and said to Rin Enbin. So, Rin, you have to do something. Me? Rin Enbin was stunned. As you can see, even though that man is on par with the great hero, he is still at a disadvantage. Moreover, he is only a human. Once he enters a battle of attrition, he will run out of mana and stamina eventually. On the other hand, the servant is an existence that can convert mana into movement. As long as he has enough mana, his stamina will never end. If this continues, that man will run out of stamina first. Archer calmly analyzed the situation. Moreover, that man seems to be waiting for Berserker to reveal a flaw. However, Berserker's real body is that of the great Greek hero, Hercules. Even if he is in a frenzy, the skills and instincts engraved in his body are still very amazing. It is very likely that he will reveal a flaw in the next second. It is also very likely that he will not be able to wait until that man's strength is exhausted. Therefore, you must help that man. Rin Enbin immediately raised his head, and once again looked at the two people who were engaged in a violent battle, his eyes flashing. Both Rin Enbin and Archer didn't know. In fact, Noah had a self-created respiratory art. Even though his stamina wasn't limitless, if he continued to use it, it wouldn't be a problem until the next morning. That was why Noah chose to wait. Otherwise, he wouldn't have chosen to fight in such a disadvantageous situation. Archer, who didn't know about this, made the right judgment. Don't worry, you can do whatever you want. If you seize the opportunity, you will definitely be able to create an opening for that man. Archer's voice echoed in Rin Enbin's mind. Don't forget, There is still a servant who disappeared from the scene. After being reminded by Archer, Rin Enben's heart shook. He took a deep breath and stood up. I understand, Archer. You seized the opportunity. I understand, Archer said, and then went silent. At this moment, the situation on the battlefield finally changed. Just as Noah and Berserker were bombarding each other in the most violent form, like two chariots that were constantly colliding with each other, Noah and Berserker bombarded each other repeatedly. Whoosh! Behind Berserker's back, a sharp dagger connected to a chain broke through the air like an arrow and shot towards Berserker's thick back with an ear-piercing sound. Roar! Berserker, who was preparing to swing his sword again, instinctively paused. The ferocious axe in his hand let out a furious roar. He suddenly turned around and viciously swung his sword at the chain dagger that was shooting towards him. Clank! The sound of metal clashing echoed in the forest. The short sword with monster strength was knocked away by Berserker's sword and returned to Rider, who was standing on top of a tree. At the same time, Archer's voice rang in Rin Dosaka's mind. He had been observing the scene with clairvoyance and mind's eye. Rin Enben's expression froze. In his hand, he threw the gemstones that he had been holding all this while towards Berserker's head. Bang! The gemstones exploded and turned into a dense light that enveloped Berserker's body. Immediately, Berserker felt like he was being pressed down by a heavy mountain. His whole body suddenly sank, and even the sword in his hand drooped down. Noah suddenly raised his head. His deep eyes flashed with a terrifying expression. Now! The magic patterns that spread all over Noah's body suddenly contracted and gathered in one of Noah's hands. Dense magic surged from Noah's palm. In an instant, the hand that was shining with magic patterns pierced towards Berserker's heart. Poochie! Blood splattered into the sky. Chapter 725. Poochie! Under the stab of Noah's palm, which was covered with the magic patterns of Enhance Magic, Berserker's broad chest was directly pierced through by Noah where his heart was. Roar! The roar that belonged to Berserker resounded through the night sky. There seemed to be a hint of berserk in his voice that only an injured beast would have. After all, he was still a servant who had the ability to continue fighting. Even though his heart had been pierced, Berserker still had the ability to move. After roaring angrily, he raised the huge and ferocious axe in his hand and swung it at Noah's head with lightning speed. Noah's hand had already sunk into his heart. Feeling the oppressive wind coming from above his head, Noah actually closed his eyes. Buzz! In the next moment, Noah's hand that pierced Berserker's heart flashed with a burst of magical light. I don't believe that you won't die if I directly release the magic cannon in your body. After finishing his words, a dazzling magical light shone from Berserker's body. Bang! In just a moment, Berserker's tall and strong body directly exploded into a pile of minced meat. Under the cover of the sky full of flames and the rich magical light, he was annihilated into pieces of charcoal. Then, Noah's figure shot out from the sky full of flames and the rich magical light and landed on the ground. With one hand on the ground, his body half crouched down. After rubbing against the ground for a very long distance, he finally stopped. And in the sky full of flames and the rich magical light, Berserker's lower body was still standing there. He was like a giant who would never surrender to his fate. He stood there without falling, which really confirmed his reputation as a great hero. However, no matter how strong he was, in the absence of mana, even if his relic had the ability to nullify all attacks below grade B, he would still be dead if half of his body was blown up by Noah's mana cannon, which was directly released from his body with all his might. As the great hero of the myths, Berserker of Hercules had finally died once. He had only died once. Under the watchful eyes of Noah, Rin Inaka, Rider, and Archer, the remaining half of Berserker's body began to glow red. Chi-chi! A sizzling sound like a flame being extinguished began to sound from the remaining half of Berserker's body. In the next second, it was as if time had reversed. Around the remaining half of Berserker's body, pieces of his body began to appear out of thin air. They gathered together and gradually formed the missing half of Berserker's body, allowing Berserker to recover to his original state. Roar! With a flash of red light in his eyes, Berserker suddenly raised his head and let out a roar that shook the air. Seeing this, Rin Enbin couldn't help but take a step back as her expression changed. So, it's possible to resurrect. Even Noah couldn't help but frown as a troubled look appeared on his face. It was a legendary hero that could be resurrected 11 times. It had to be killed 12 times before it completely disappeared. It was the highest level of heroic spirit. If that was the case, it would still be fine. The problem was that the 12 trials, God's hand, not only could resurrect Berserker and nullify attacks that were below B level, it could also nullify all attacks that Berserker had received. In other words, Noah, who had just fired a mana cannon into Berserker's body, wouldn't be able to do anything to Berserker if he were to use it again. The real problem isn't Hercules, but his noble phantasm. Noah's frown deepened. If we don't find a way to deal with the 12 trials, God's hand, it would be extremely difficult to defeat Berserker. Master! Ryder appeared from the fog and arrived behind Noah. He was also looking at Berserker, who was roaring in front of him. There was a hint of heaviness in his voice. Do you need me to do it? The meaning of this sentence was not that Ryder wanted to participate in the battle from now on, but that he wanted to use all his skills and relic to fight against Berserker. Noah also stood up and looked at Berserker. He did not turn his head and said, "There's no other way. Since the opponent has already taken out his relic, if we don't return the favor, it would be unreasonable." Understood. Ryder immediately responded. Archer. On the side, Rin Enbin also ordered his servant. Can you move again? If not, I can only use the command spell. Only the master could use the command spell. Not only could it restrict the servant, but it could also turn the command into power, allowing the servant to exert extraordinary strength. Even if Archer could not move, as long as Rin Enbin used the command spell and gave the command to defeat the opponent, then even if Archer could not move, his body would be driven to fight under the command of the command spell. Knowing this, Archer could only helplessly say, "That's the only way." Just when Noah and the others were ready to use their skills, Ilya, who had been silently looking at Noah, suddenly laughed. She laughed very happily. Interesting, really interesting. Undoubtedly, you're just a human, but you can directly confront my Berserker and even kill him once. Big brother, I didn't know you were so interesting. Ilya's bell-like laughter made everyone, including Noah, stare blankly for a moment. Then, they looked at each other in confusion. It was because the trace of cruelty and killing intent that had existed until now in Ilya's innocent voice had disappeared. Okay, it's decided. Ilya thought of something and ordered Berserker. Come back first, Berserker. Hearing Ilya's words, Berserker's violent aura gradually began to dissipate. The bulging muscles on his body also slowly relaxed. Holding the huge ferocious axe and sword, he stepped back with loud footsteps and returned behind Ilya. Like a loyal guard, he no longer made a sound. Seeing this, not to mention Rin Enbin, even Noah narrowed his eyes and looked at Ilya. What do you mean by this? I just don't want to fight anymore. Ilya put her small hands behind her back and closed her eyes with a smile. She seemed to be in a very good mood. I thought that this Holy Grail war would be very boring, but since there's such an interesting person like Big Brother, it would be a pity to kill you now. So, I don't want to fight anymore. I'll slowly play with Big Brother in the future. After saying this, Ilya seemed to have thought of something and said to Noah. However, this forest is my territory. My villa is here. Big Brother, you can't suddenly barge in like today. Otherwise, I'll get angry again. Leaving this sentence, Ilya turned around and skipped away from the scene. Looking at Ilya's petite figure gradually disappearing into the distance and recalling Ilya's words, Noah was silent for a moment before looking at Rin Enbin. You actually brought me to the enemy's base? Rin Enosaka's face also stiffened after hearing Ilya's words. When she heard Noah's words, her face immediately burned. She crossed her arms and turned her head away. What can I do? Sakura's safety is the most important thing. Since it's the most important thing, Can I trouble you to find a safer place to talk? So annoying. It's because it's the most important thing that I messed up. Undoubtedly, the second and third important things can be solved perfectly. But the most important thing can't be done properly. Noah finally understood. The young lady of the Enbin family in front of him was a troublemaker who would drop the ball at critical moments. Chapter 726. In a restaurant in Fuyuki City, Noah and Rin Enosaka sat opposite each other. One had a cup of black coffee in front of him, and the other had a cup of black tea in front of him. One was speechless, and the other was sullen. The sullen one was of course Rin Enosaka. This girl seemed to still be vexed that she had brought Noah into the Baron family's headquarters, causing Ilya to attack with Berserker, causing everyone to fall into a bitter battle. However, if it was Noah, he would probably be annoyed too. After all, Rin Enosaka actually knew. She knew that the Arensberg mansion was in the depths of the forest, and she also knew that it was the enemy's base. In the end, because of Mitsuyama Sakura, Rin Enosaka forgot about this matter and foolishly brought Noah into Ilya's territory, leading to Ilya's attack. Originally, Noah thought that Ilya just happened to be active in the forest. Who knew that he would bring Berserker out and threaten to kill everyone as soon as he appeared? It was all because Rin Enbin brought Noah into Ilya's territory, causing her to think that Noah and Rin Enbin were here to cause trouble. That was why she appeared. How should he put it? She even forgot such an important matter. Isn't Rin Enosaka too much? In any case, Rin Enosaka would screw up on the most important matter. Noah thoroughly experienced it and firmly remembered it in his heart, so as to avoid being tricked by this girl in the future. Noah sighed when he saw that Rin Tozaka was going to continue to be annoyed. Then, as the result of luckily escaping a disaster, and also as the price for causing trouble, Miss Enosaka, do you want to reward me with a meal? After that, although Rin Enosaka was annoyed, she didn't let Noah go. Instead, she invited Noah here as if she had something to say. I know that it's all my fault, but it has already happened. It's useless to apologize. It's better to talk about something useful. Rin Enbin finally recovered from his vexed state. He looked straight at Noah and asked, I want to ask you, do you have a way to deal with Berserker? It seems that even though the process was quite unpleasant, Rin Inaka still felt threatened by Ilya's servant. Or rather, no one would think that Berserker was not a threat, right? Not only did he have such an exaggerated ability value, but he also had such a foul relic. To put it bluntly, even Noah felt that in this Holy Grail war, if it was a one-on-one battle, there should not be a stronger servant than Berserker. Noah was actually quite confident in his rider's abilities. However, after today's battle, even Noah felt that it would be difficult for Ryder to defeat Berserker even if he used all his skills and relics. Thus, Noah said bluntly, No, that guy just happened to hit my weak spot. It's not a problem to fight evenly, but I don't have the confidence to defeat him. With Noah's physique, he was not afraid of any mystical threats in the realm of God. However, Berserker was an expert in hand-to-hand combat. Noah did not lack the confidence to deal with Berserker without the use of his authority. However, if he wanted to defeat Berserker, Noah dared not say that he had 100% confidence in defeating him. Even with Ryder's full power, it should not be a problem to completely suppress Berserker. However, it would be a different story if he wanted to defeat Berserker. Therefore, for Noah, Berserker was also very difficult to deal with. The difficult part was that Berserker was simply immortal and could not be killed. If we don't think of a way to defeat that relic, it would be impossible for us to win. Noah shook his head. Although Ryder and I have yet to use our trump cards, we're not sure if they'll work on Berserker who has that relic. So, if you're asking me if I have a way to deal with him, my answer is yes, but I can't guarantee that it'll work. You still have a trump card that you haven't used? Rin was dumbfounded when he heard this unexpected news. Where did this monster come from? Not only did he have the ability to fight Berserker head-on, but he also had a trump card that he had not used yet. In addition, he mentioned that he had a trump card that was effective against magicians. This man in front of him was no less difficult to deal with than Berserker. If that was the case, this man's servant had not used his relic yet, right? As he thought about this, Rin felt more and more stressed. He was even a little flustered and exasperated. Damn it, why isn't Archer that powerful? As soon as he finished his sentence, Archer, who was in his spiritual form, spoke in a displeased tone. I'm really sorry that I can't help you. Forget it, we still have a command spell that we haven't used. It's not like we don't have any other means. Rin waved his hand and then remembered. Oh yeah, I seem to have used one of my command spells. Only after hearing this did Noah realize that there was a command spell on the back of Rin's hand that was blurring. That was the proof that it was used. You still have the nerve to say that? Archer's voice sounded again. You actually wasted a command incantation on something like, obey everything I say. Ling, what do you want me to say to you? For servants, the restriction of the command spell was also different. For example, the more vague the command was, the lower the effect. If it was an instantaneous command or a specific command, it would have a high degree of coercion. For example, a command like, come here, could even be used to teleport through space. If the execution of the command was too long, or the range was too wide, the effect would be reduced. If a command like, obey everything I say, was effective, then there would be no need for 3 command incantations to exercise the authority of 3 commands. Only 1 command incantation was needed, and the servant would continue to obey. Why would there be any need to worry about the servant's betrayal or disobedience? Therefore, this command was almost useless. In other words, if Rin gave such an order, then it was really a waste of a command spell. You're so annoying, who told you to be so arrogant? Rin said in a bad mood. Moreover, it's not completely useless. You also said that as long as it's not something that you resist from the bottom of your heart, then there's no way to disobey me, right? Since it's something that I don't resist from the bottom of my heart, then even if I don't use the command spell, I will still listen to you, right? Archer sighed heavily. So, in terms of results, it's still a waste. Hearing the conversation between the two, Noah was speechless again. This Rin Enbin was even more unreasonable than Noah thought. And then? Noah could only change the topic. Now that you know what I'm doing, what are your plans? That's right, I do plan to do so. Rin Enbin's expression turned serious. I want to work with you for the time being. Work together? Noah raised an eyebrow. You mean, the two of us will work together during the Holy Grail War? Although you have a lot of methods that I don't have, but against Berserker, you also don't have the confidence to win, right? Rin Enbin nodded. If that's the case, then let's work together. This way, the chances of winning against Berserker will be higher, right? Hearing this, Noah muttered to himself for a moment before replying. Ryder, what do you think? Noah had just asked when Ryder, who was also in spirit form, immediately spoke. I'll let Master decide. Noah slightly frowned as he fell into deep thought. Didn't you say that you didn't want Sakura to see us fight? Rin Tozaka asked slyly. Then, if we work together, it should be a good choice, right? This sentence made Noah frown. He was a bit unhappy. You're using this as an excuse? But it's also a fact, isn't it? Rin Enbin shrugged. What do you think? That's realistic, right? This time, Noah was helpless. This Rin Enbin really knew how to take advantage of loopholes. Chapter 727. On a high hill in Fuyuki City, there was a mansion that was as big as the mansion. The walls were covered with vines and looked like they had been there for a long time. Currently, there was only one person living in such a manor house. Compared to the size of the mansion, the number of people living here was pitifully small. It was so small that it could not even be described as luxurious. This mansion was the mansion of the Enosaka family, Rin Enosaka's home. The manager of the Spirit Vein in Fuyuki City lived here. At this time, the sky was completely dark. In the hall on the second floor of the manor house, Noah walked around the vast Western-style hall. Finally, he stopped in front of a table and cast his eyes on it. Over there was a framed photograph that was placed on top of it. The photo seemed to be a family portrait. He was a very handsome man. She looked like a virtuous woman. There was also a young girl who looked very happy. These three people made up the family portrait in front of Noah. It showed the structure of the Enosaka family in front of Noah. Noah recognized them at a glance. The little girl was Rin Enosaka when she was young. So, the man and woman next to her should be Rin Enosaka's parents. However, Noah didn't see half a shadow of such parents after entering Enosaka's house. Obviously, Rin Enosaka's parents were not here. Where did Rin Enosaka's parents go? Noah did not ask this question. The reason was simple. As a magician, Rin Enosaka's parents must be related to the magic world. Living in a world full of lunatics, Noah could only think of one reason why Rin Enosaka's parents were not at home. They were dead. If that was the case, what was the point of asking? At this time, Rin Enosaka pushed the door open with a cup of hot black tea in her hand. Sorry, there's only black tea in the house. You seem to like coffee, right? It's okay. Black tea is fine too. Noah turned around and sat down on the sofa. Some of my friends like black tea too. I don't hate it. In the former Kyuji mansion, there was Yuju who liked black tea very much. At that time, Noah drank black tea almost every day. If Chin Z hadn't successfully transitioned Noah into a coffee fanatic out of bad intentions, Noah would still be drinking black tea now. Lilith, on the other hand, was very fond of milk tea, Erica liked cappuccino, and Alice was also a fan of black tea. Even Leah and the others usually preferred black tea. Noah got used to it after a while. Is that so? Rin Enosaka put the black tea cup in front of Noah and spoke to a place where there was no one around. If it's Archer and Ryder, it shouldn't be necessary, right? With that, Archer and Ryder dispelled their spiritual forms behind Rin Enosaka and Noah respectively and appeared in the air. Ryder was as quiet as ever. He stood behind Noah like a loyal guard, not moving an inch. Archer glanced at the cup of hot black tea on the table, crossed his arms, and closed his eyes. Undoubtedly, you only prepared a cup of black tea. You didn't prepare any for us, Rin. Rin Enosaka tilted his head. So you want it? No, I don't want to drink it. Archer sighed. But this is a question of sincerity, right? Don't mind it, don't mind it. Rin Enosaka waved his hand nonchalantly and quickly threw Ryder and Archer to the back of his mind. He looked at Noah seriously. You said you have a way to deal with Berserker. What's the specific plan? The surrounding atmosphere suddenly became solemn. Looking at Rin Enosaka's serious expression, Noah picked up the cup of black tea, took a sip, and said, There are 3 methods. The simplest method, the stupidest method, and the most reliable method, but I'm not sure if it'll work. You can come up with so many plans to deal with a monster like that. I underestimated you. Rin Enosaka patted his cheeks and pulled himself together. Then, let's talk about the simplest method. The simplest method, which is also the most impractical method, is to directly deal with Berserker's master, Elia Field. Noah gave such an answer. As everyone knows, the reason why servants are able to maintain their forms in this world is because of their master's magic. As long as they lose their master, no matter how strong the servants are, they can only grieve. Furthermore, Berserker doesn't have the ability to act alone. So, rather than dealing with Berserker, it is more practical to deal with Iliosphère. But you also said that it's the most impractical method, right? Rin Enosaka seemed to understand Noah's meaning and sighed. Unless we can immediately launch an attack the moment we face Iliosphère and finish him off with the first strike, we won't be able to avoid Berserker and take down Iliosphère. Therefore, that was the simplest and most impractical method. It was also known to all masters and servants. After all, every master had a command seal on them. If they chose to use this method, they would have to deal with Elia Field in the first strike. Otherwise, when Elia Field reacted, she could use the command seal to summon Berserker back to her side. That was also the reason why Noah didn't directly attack Elia and chose to fight Berserker instead. Besides, Berserker's instinct was stronger than his rationality. If he attacked Ilya, who knows what kind of stimulation that monster would receive? Therefore, this method was both the simplest and the least practical. And the stupidest method is to slowly wear down Berserker's noble phantasm's resurrection count. Noah spread his hands. If we have overwhelming power on our side, the so-called immortal body is not that difficult to deal with at all. We can slowly wear down Berserker, or even directly take away several of his lives at once. It was just like Phoenix in the world of Demon High School. Riesel, who also had an undying body, couldn't even withstand a single blow in front of such overwhelming power. It's a pity. Although we're working together, we don't have overwhelming power, right? Rin Enbin frowned. Or, does your rider have a decisive noble phantasm that can achieve this goal? Indeed, but even if we use it, taking away a few of Berserker's lives wouldn't be a problem. However, it's not ideal to directly kill Berserker. Noah shook his head. To be honest, I'm not even sure if a noble phantasm that can take away 12 of Berserker's lives really exists. That means our best choice is the most reliable method that you mentioned, but we can't be sure if it'll work. Rin Enbin's tone was slightly heavy. What's that method? Actually, I've encountered an immortal body quite a few times. Noah supported his face with his hands and leaned his elbows on the armrest. His eyes flickered slightly. No matter which immortal body it is, the most fundamental weakness is the spirit. Spirit! Rin Enbin was slightly stunned. Then he reacted and his eyes lit up. Do you mean that although Berserker's body can be resurrected, there's no way to resurrect his spirit? I have a method that can directly destroy the opponent's spirit. Noah said. If Berserker's spirit can't be resurrected with a noble phantasm, as long as his spirit is destroyed, even if his body isn't destroyed, what's left is just a shell that won't move. Chapter 728. For Noah, an immortal body was not that difficult to deal with. That might be troublesome, but only to the extent of being troublesome. Berserker's noble phantasm could not only nullify attacks below B rank, but it could also nullify attacks that had been used once. It was equivalent to an immortal body, not to mention the fact that it could be resurrected. It was simply cheating. However, regardless of whether it was an immortal body or resurrection, Noah had encountered them many times. Therefore, Noah was not surprised that the great hero in Greek mythology had such an ability, even though he found it troublesome. Of course, there were ways to deal with it. Destroy the opponent's spirit. The body was immortal, but the spirit could not be immortal, right? The body could be resurrected, but the spirit could not be resurrected, right? If he used one of the 3 major spells of the fairy tale, it could directly destroy the opponent's mind. It was a super spell known as the Super Trial spell, the Fairy Law. It was possible to destroy Berserker's mind in one fell swoop and turn him into a living dead. After knowing that Noah had such a method, Rin Enbin was surprised, but at the same time, he also noticed a problem. Since you said that you are not sure if it will work, there should be some drawbacks, right? Smart. Noah smiled bitterly. To be honest, although I have such a method, I can't guarantee that it will be able to destroy the servant spirit. As he said that, Noah even explained himself. Originally, the servant spirit was like a spirit. As a heroic spirit, it is easy to imagine how strong his spirit and spirit are. In addition, Berserker is the Hercules who completed the 12 impossible missions. With such an extreme experience, his endurance and spirit are immeasurable. I am not sure if my method can destroy Berserker's spirit in one fell swoop. After hearing Noah's words, Rin Enbin was silent. Even Rider and Archer had a slightly troubled expression on their faces. Presumably, they weren't sure if Noah's method would succeed in one fell swoop. Of course, the strength of this method is related to my magic and how well I can use it. With my magic, I am more or less confident that I can destroy the spirit of a heroic spirit. Noah smiled. He brought both good and bad news. The problem is that this method requires a lot of time. You've seen Berserker's ability to charge forward. If you're careless, you'll die, let alone use a method that requires a long time to prepare. Therefore, if we really need to use this method, we can only rely on you guys to buy us some time. This was one of the reasons why Noah chose to work with Rin Enbin. If he only wanted to deal with Berserker, Noah and Ryder would be enough. There was no need to work with Rin Enbin. However, if he wanted to defeat Berserker, it was necessary to work with Rin Enbin. When the time comes, Ryder will have to protect me from other factors. Only you two can deal with Berserker, Noah said to Rin Enbin. As long as you can buy time, our chances of winning are not small. After he finished speaking, the entire place suddenly fell silent. Rin Enbin seemed to be considering the feasibility of the plan. In the end, he nodded and looked at Archer. Archer, are you confident that you can defeat Berserker? If you want me to defeat that monster, even I wouldn't dare to say that I am confident. Archer closed his eyes and smiled. But if I say that I can't defeat Berserker and buy time, won't you be more disappointed in me? Let's be clear. I have never been disappointed in you. Of course, there are many things that I want to complain about. Rin Enbin smiled. So, Archer, I will depend on your performance. Yeah, this is really hard work. Archer shrugged helplessly. I can only say that I will try my best. Have you decided? Noah shrugged. Then our cooperation is confirmed. Yes. Rin Enbin smiled and moved his head forward. He looked straight into Noah's dark eyes. Thank you for your guidance, Mr. Noah. Just call me Noah. Noah glanced at Rin Enbin. If you are polite to me now, I won't be used to it. That's it then. Rin Enbin nodded in satisfaction and stretched his back. As for how to deal with the other masters and servants, we will come up with a plan after we gather enough information. Deal with the other masters and servants? Noah was taken aback. After hesitating for a while, he asked with uncertainty. Don't tell me that our cooperation doesn't stop until we get rid of Berserker? Yes, that was my plan from the beginning. Rin Enbin asked in a strange tone. But you don't want Sakura to see us kill each other, right? I do have such a plan. Noah raised an eyebrow. However, you wouldn't choose not to fight me because of this reason, right? How is that possible? Rin Enbin's relaxed expression slowly disappeared. He looked at Noah with a serious expression. As the daughter of the Enbin family, my goal is to win this Holy Grail war. The Holy Grail only belongs to one person. My victory with you will only be delayed until the end. From Rin Enbin's words, Noah felt a strong sense of mission. That's right, it was a sense of mission. For Rin and Osaka, this Holy Grail war should be very special, right? After all, the Enbin family was one of the 3 magician families that founded the Holy Grail War. Their biggest wish was to obtain the Holy Grail and reach the origin. To be honest, Noah didn't think that Rin Enbin was the kind of normal magician who would do anything to reach the origin. However, Rin Enbin should have already realized that he had to embark on a bloody path in the future, right? Obtaining the Holy Grail was only Rin Enbin's duty as a child of the Enbin family. As for what he should do after obtaining the Holy Grail, Noah didn't see such an obvious goal from Rin Enbin's words and actions. Therefore, Rin Enbin really only participated in the Holy Grail War for victory. Noah felt that he had misunderstood Rin Enbin. Originally, he thought that Rin Enbin was just a magician who hadn't made his debut yet, just like Ayoko. She had a sense of awareness but was immature, and would even drop the ball at crucial moments. Even her personality was affected by her emotions. Otherwise, she wouldn't have used a command spell just because Archer was too arrogant. But now, it seemed that even if that was the case, Rin Enbin still had a resolute side that Noah couldn't deny. She really was a girl who was similar to that immature magician Ayoko Aozaki in all aspects. Because of this, Noah really couldn't bear to see Rin Enbin embark on a path of killing for the sake of magic. Just like Ayoko Aozaki. I have indeed received your message. Noah said calmly. As you wish, until the final battle arrives, let's maintain a cooperative relationship. That would be for the best. Rin Enbin smiled lightly and turned around to look at Yizichin. After a long time, Rin Enbin, whose back was facing Noah, finally spoke. You really don't plan on doing anything to Sakura? Noah, who had just picked up his teacup, paused for a moment, then took a sip of black tea and replied. Is that so? Rin Enbin nodded. That's good. This time, there was less suspicion and more trust. Chapter 729. After coming up with a plan to deal with Berserker, Noah left Inaka's house. Under the dark moonlight, he walked out of Inaka's house. Rin Inaka was considerate enough to send Noah out of her house. It's already late at night. This is the time when the master and the servant are active. Standing in front of her house, Rin Dosaka flicked her beautiful black hair and said to Noah, who just walked out of the house, "You have to be careful. Don't meet other masters and servants." The most fundamental part of magic was concealment. The so-called magic was actually a power that had already been determined in the origin. That power was limited. The more people who used it, the less power each magician would get. Therefore, in order to prevent magic from completely disappearing, the magic associations set the most basic rule of concealment. They were even willing to kill witnesses. This was the same for the Church of Holy Light. To the Church of Holy Light, magic, which could only be performed by God in their teachings, was simply heresy. Therefore, the relationship between the magic association and the Church of Holy Light was very bad. In the past, they were constantly at war, but now, they were only in a state of truce. They could start another war at any time. Therefore, the Church of Holy Light naturally didn't want to see magic being exposed in front of ordinary people. After all, if everyone knew that the so-called miracles of God could also be achieved by themselves, and that there was no need to pray to God in order to obtain them, then the most fundamental belief of the Holy Church would be shaken, and the teachings of the Holy Church would be questioned. Therefore, in terms of concealment, the Magic Association and the Church of Holy Light had the same point of view. Because of this, the Church of Holy Light would also consider concealment first. This Holy Grail war that was under the supervision of the Church of Holy Light was naturally the same. Since two of the biggest powers in the world had already decided on such a course of action, then no matter how arrogant they were, they had to consider concealment first. Naturally, when there weren't many people out at night, it was the time when the master and the servant were most active. I don't need you to remind me. Noah nodded in agreement. I've already fought a monster like Berserker today. I don't want to meet another difficult opponent. At least let me go today. To me, you're also a monster if you can fight a monster like that, Rin Dosaka said to Noah as she rolled her eyes. She seemed to have thought of something. Speaking of which, you haven't been to the church yet, right? Don't you plan to report to them first? At the very least, you're a supervisor. I really don't intend to do that, Noah said bluntly. Even though it's just my personal opinion, I really don't like priests. So, let's just forget about it. In another parallel world of this world, Noah had met a terrible priest like Wenbing Yongli, who had an abnormal value system. And in the world of Demon High School, that disgusting priest, Freddy, made Noah's impression of priests drop to the lowest. How could Noah like the priest? In this regard, Rin Enbin actually agreed. What a coincidence, I also have the same idea. However, if you go there and report, you can at least get some information, such as the number of masters and servants that have appeared, Rin Enbin said. Since you don't plan to go to the church, then I'll tell you by the way. At present, in Fuyuki City, including you and me, there are already 5 confirmed masters. The servants that have been summoned are Lancer, Archer, Rider, Caster, and Berserker. Only Saber and Assassin haven't been summoned yet. No, it should be said that they might have been summoned, but it hasn't been confirmed yet. Rin Enbin reminded. So, you should be careful. Noah nodded thoughtfully and smiled at Rin Enbin. I understand, but you don't need to worry about me. At least, compared to me, you should be more worried about yourself. You're still as confident as ever. Be careful not to fail miserably. Not everyone will face you head-on like Berserker. Rin Enbin threw such a sentence. Still the same sentence, you should be careful. Lancer, Archer, Rider, Caster, and Berserker? On the way back to the apartment, Noah secretly muttered. I have already met Lancer, but his master didn't appear. Berserker's master is Alicia Field. So, I haven't met Caster yet, right? That being said, Noah was not afraid of Castor. No matter what, even if he didn't use his authority, Noah was also a God slayer. The mystical power that didn't reach the realm of God was ineffective in front of his curse resistance. And Castor, as the name suggested, was a magician. As a famous heroic spirit in myths and legends, the magician who could sit on the Castor's position must have a high level of magic attainment that could be imagined. However, after all, it was just a servant's avatar, not the real body. Even if there was magic that could cause damage to God's capital, for Noah, Castor's threat was much smaller than the other servants. As for the remaining saber and assassin, Noah needed to be wary of saber. As the one with the highest requirement for ability value among the 7 servants, it was also the strongest job class among the 7 servants under normal circumstances. The other party's close combat skills were at least on par with lancers, which was still a threat to Noah. On the contrary, assassin for Noah, who had excellent sensing ability, may not be difficult to deal with. Well, Noah, who was thinking about all this, suddenly felt a strange feeling, and his footsteps subconsciously stopped. Raising his head, he looked forward. What was imprinted in Noah's eyes was the dark. There was no pedestrian at all, a figure slowly walking toward this side. That was a very conspicuous person. If one had to say why, it would be because that person had a head of very eye-catching golden hair. He was wearing black and white, like a motorcycle suit. His figure was slender, his hands were in his pockets, like a wanton teenager, exuding a sense of existence that could not be ignored. In that strong sense of existence, Noah felt a sense of oppression. That didn't mean that the wanton teenager in front of him was very threatening to Noah. Instead, as if it was a matter of course, that person was releasing their presence to the entire world that they existed in. Therefore, that sense of oppression was not directed at Noah, but seemed to be directed at the surrounding environment. That was definitely not an ordinary person. For a moment, Noah did not move anymore. Standing in the same place, he looked straight at the blond man walking toward him. The blond man did not seem to notice Noah's existence. His eyes were closed, and there was a trace of a domineering arc at the corner of his mouth. With leisurely steps, he walked past Noah. Between Tanjing, just as the blond man passed by Noah, a light sentence drifted into Noah's ears. If you don't hurry to that woman's side, she will be in more and more pain. Leaving this sentence, the blond man gradually disappeared into the moonlit night with leisurely footsteps as if he did not exist in the first place. Noah did not turn his head, nor did he speak. He just stared at the dark road in front of him, deep in the darkness. After a long time, he suddenly smiled. It seems that there are still many unexpected factors in this Holy Grail war. Chapter 730. The next day, not long after dawn, Noah left the apartment. He didn't even have breakfast. He followed the path he had taken yesterday and arrived at Enosaka's house. Noah raised his hand and was about to knock on the door, but the door in front of him was opened. Then, Archer in a red and black night suit appeared in front of Noah and looked at Noah. "You just signed a partnership yesterday, and you can't wait to find my master today? If you can't wait, that's fine. After all, I have something to ask Enosaka." Noah withdrew his hand and asked Archer. "Then where is Enosaka?" "Still sleeping. That woman is not good at dealing with the morning. It's impossible for her to get up at this time." Archer replied expressionlessly. He opened the door completely and turned sideways. "In short, if you want to find Rin, then go find him yourself." After saying this, Archer's entire body disappeared under the cover of a blue mist that was similar to spiritual energy. He had entered the state of spiritual transformation. Seeing this, Noah's eyes twitched. This guy, just like Rin Enosaka said, he's really arrogant. With that said, Noah also walked into the entrance of Tasaka's house. After closing the door, he walked through the corridor in front of the door and headed for the stairs. Enosaka's house was the manager of Fuyuki City. As a magician family with some history, even if Rin Enosaka was the only one left in the house, there were naturally magicians in this house. Just like the old mansion with pearls, Enosaka's house was full of barriers and magic spells left by Rin Enosaka or the former residents of Enosaka's house. If one barged in without permission, there would be no return. Of course, for Noah, who had a strong resistance to curses, those enchantments and spells were as good as non-existent. He would vanish with a gentle touch. However, Noah didn't come here to cause trouble. He really had something to ask Rin Enosaka. Therefore, Noah went directly to the stairs on the second floor and walked toward Rin Enosaka's room. Yesterday, Noah had taken a look around to Saka's house. As for the location of Rin Enbin's room, Rin Enbin had casually mentioned it yesterday. In order not to accidentally break into a girl's room, Noah also made a note of it. Who would have thought that it would come in handy in such a situation? After passing through the long corridor, Noah arrived in front of a room and knocked on the door. "Yosaka, are you there?" These words were met with an indescribable silence. Thinking of what Archer had just said, Noah knocked harder on the door and raised his voice a little. "Nagasaka, reply if you're here or I'm going to barge in." However, after he finished speaking, there was still a moment of silence. Noah pursed his lips and helplessly reached out to open the door. "I'm coming in." Noah opened the door to Rin Enbin's room, exposing the entire room to him. It was a rather spacious room. The decorations were a bit old-fashioned, without the pink color that a girl's room should have. It looked somewhat lifeless, but the warm atmosphere was more or less there. Perhaps it was because the weather was still very cold. Although there was no heater in the room, the windows were tightly shut, and the curtains were drawn, making the entire room a bit dark. In such a situation, in the innermost part of the room, there was a bed that took up quite a lot of space. The blanket was actually a mess, twisted into a ball. From the twisted blanket, Noah noticed a fluctuating breath. Needless to say, the person that Noah was looking for must be like a snail hiding in its shell, nestled in a ball of quilt. At this moment, the corner of Noah's mouth twitched. Was she not good at coping with the morning? This was a sleeping difference that she couldn't tolerate at night, right? Of course, for a beautiful girl to have such a sleeping posture, perhaps, it was a cute point. Unfortunately, Noah didn't have the time to look at Rin Inaka's sleeping posture. He sighed and walked into the room. He walked to the edge of the bed and reached out his hand to shake the blanket that was twisted into a ball. "Enbin, wake up." Under Noah's call and shaking, the twisted blanket finally moved. Just like the word said, it only moved a little. In the next second, the blanket immediately fell into a dead silence and no longer moved. Noah felt that his patience was wearing thin. He resisted the urge to lift the blanket, took a deep breath, stood up, and walked out of the room. After some time, Noah returned to Rin Enbin's room with a piece of ice in his hand. He narrowed his eyes and didn't say anything. He slightly lifted a corner of the blanket, and then, without mercy, threw the ice in his hand in. Wah-dash! The next moment, the blanket that was twisted into a ball suddenly bounced up. With a cry, Rin Enbin jumped out of the blanket in her pajamas. Her hair was untied, and it cascaded down to her waist like a waterfall. She jumped and screamed. "So cold, so cold." Should it be said that Noah's method was unbelievably accurate? The ice that Noah threw into the blanket actually went under Rin Enbin's pajamas. Rin Enbin pulled it out and threw it on the ground, panting heavily. "What's going on? Why are there ice cubes here?" Realizing that Rin Enbin didn't notice his presence, Noah covered his face and sighed. "Because I was the one who threw it in." Rin Enbin only just realized that there was another person in her room. She turned her head and looked at Noah, who was covering his face and sighing. She raised her eyebrows and pointed at him. "Why are you here?" "I'm curious. Why didn't you notice that I came in?" Noah retorted. "Although we have a cooperative relationship, you're completely defenseless, which is basically telling me that now is the best time to get rid of you. That's why you should be thankful that I threw an ice cube at you instead of a magic bullet, Miss Tasaka. So annoying. So many things have happened in the past few days. At least let me have a good night's sleep." Rin Enbin's shoulders and head drooped as she spoke weakly. "So, why did you wake me up so cordially?" I just have something to ask you. Noah looked at Rin Enbin and paused for a moment before asking. Let me ask you. Sakura's surname is Jiantong, right? Is it that Jiantong? At first, Noah didn't think about Jiantong Sakura's surname. However, last night, when the mysterious blonde man mentioned it, Noah remembered Jiantong Sakura's surname. In Fuyuki City, there were 3 magic families that created the Holy Grail War: Ritual Enbin, Jiantong, and Beiran. If Jiantong Sakura's surname was Jiantong, then wouldn't it mean that Jiantong Sakura was also related to the magic world, and could even be related to the Holy Grail War? After all, as the 3 families that created the Holy Grail War ritual, every time the Holy Grail War ritual, there would be people from these 3 families participating in the Holy Grail War. Now, Rin Enbin from Enbin and Beiran from Beiran had already appeared. What about the Tong family's representative? Thinking about this question and the mysterious blonde man's words last night, Noah felt that something was wrong. He came here at dawn today to try to get to the bottom of it. Are you suspecting that Sakura is also a master? At the mention of Jiantong Sakura, Rin Enbin seemed to wake up and shook his head. No, you should also be able to feel that there is no trace of magic on Sakura's body. She can't be called a magician at all. Jiantong Sakura is actually declining now. In this generation, even the magic circuit is almost exhausted. They are no different from ordinary people. Therefore, Jiantong Sakura should have no participants this time. That's true. Noah frowned. After a while, he looked at Rin Enbin. Are you going to school today? What's wrong? Nothing. Noah said such a sentence. If you plan to go, take me with you. Chapter 731. Suechuan Gakuin. It was a high school located in Fuyuki City. It wasn't a noble school, nor was it a civilian school. It was just a very ordinary school. In terms of scale, Suechuan Gakuin wasn't particularly luxurious. Not to mention Haolang Gakuin, which occupied an entire artificial island when Noah studied in the world of absolute dual blades, it wasn't very outstanding even compared to Haolang Gakuin in the world of Demon High School. However, in Noah's view, from an ordinary person's point of view, Suechuan Gakuin was the kind of school that couldn't be picked out. It was slightly better than the school in Sanyo City that Noah studied in the other parallel world. Therefore, there were many students studying in this Suechuan Gakuin. Rin Enosaka was a student of this school. Matsumoto Sakura, who called Rin Enosaka Sr., was also a student of this school. Under the leadership of Rin Enosaka, who finally cheered up, Noah walked on the road to Suechuan Gakuin and soon saw the corner of the school. Rin Enosaka kept muttering to Noah, who was getting closer and closer to Suechuan Gakuin, who was observing the school. There's no trace of magic on Sakura's body. Since we can't even feel the trace of magic, then even if there's magic in her body, it's probably very little. That level of magic isn't enough to maintain the appearance of a servant. Generally speaking, the Holy Grail shouldn't have chosen someone of that level to be its master. Gaia and Aleya had also told Noah that the Holy Grail in Fuyuki City would choose to participate in the competition for its own people. The better the magician, the more likely they are to be chosen. And even if they are not particularly good magicians, if they have the factor of becoming the master, they will be chosen, such as having strong magic and so on. Of course, this is not absolute. The Holy Grail in Fuyuki City would sometimes choose some people who could be related to the Holy Grail War, in some aspects as a candidate for the master. For example, there is a deep relationship with a servant that outsiders can't see. From Rin Enbin's point of view, that kind of relationship shouldn't exist between Mitsuharu and Mitsuharu Sakura. However, Rin Enosaka couldn't be sure. After all, no matter what, the Tong family was one of the 3 families that created the Holy Grail War. They were also responsible for the creation of the command incantation, so it was possible that they had other methods to make him be chosen by the Holy Grail. Therefore, Rin Enosaka's words were not meant for Noah's ears, but for himself. Noah could empathize with Rin Enbin. At the very least, Noah himself did not wish for Tong Ing to become master and participate in this killing party. Moreover, becoming a master meant becoming an enemy, and Rin Toyama didn't want to see Toyama Sakura become his enemy. It was only natural that he would behave this way. However, the more they thought about it, the more uneasy Noah and Rin Enbin felt. Especially Noah. After knowing that Tong Ing was from the Tong family, Noah felt that he had overlooked something important. Noah knew that Tong Ing seemed to have a past that no one knew. He originally thought that it was just Tong Ying's personal problem. Now it seemed that the truth was more complicated than Noah thought. In addition, Rin Enbin's almost neurotic behavior made Noah more or less suspicious. For some reason, he felt that Rin Enosaka had special feelings for his junior sister, Tong Ing. Just because Noah mentioned it, Rin Enbin started to nag, even to the point of comforting himself. Wasn't this a bit too exaggerated? Or, the relationship between Rin Enbin and Tong Ing wasn't as simple as what Noah heard on the surface? With their own thoughts, Noah and Rin Enbin finally arrived at the gate of Suechuan Hara Academy. Because of Noah, Rin Enbin woke up early today and came to school early. Therefore, there were not many people in front of the school gate now. There were only a few students who needed to participate in the morning club activities coming and going in the school sparsely. It was very deserted. According to Rin Enbin, Tong Ing also participated in the club activities. Therefore, during this period of time, Tong Ing should have already arrived at school. However, before entering the school gate, the sharp-eyed Noah first noticed a person, causing him to stop in his tracks. Only Rin Enbin seemed to be immersed in his own world. He lowered his head and muttered to himself. In the next second, Rin Enbin heard a very flirtatious voice. "Yo, Enbin, you're early today." Hearing this voice, Rin Enbin's footsteps also stopped, but he seemed to recognize the owner of this voice. After faintly clicking his tongue, he raised his head. In front of the gate of Suechuan Gakuin Academy, there was a guy with a head full of seaweed. He had a proud expression on his face as he walked in the direction of Rin Osaka. He even pretentiously spread his arms. Hey, I thought today's club activities would be as boring as usual. I didn't expect Enbin to come so early. Why don't you come with me to the club?" Hearing this, Rin Enbin hid a trace of disdain in his eyes, and on his face, there was an elegant smile that made people feel like they were far apart. "Hello, Shinji Tong Ing." The person who had come was the seaweed head who had thrown a tantrum on the streets for no reason and had cursed at Tong Ing. Shinji Tong Ing. Tong Ying's brother. Until today, Noah finally knew the name of this guy who bullied the weak and feared the strong. Because Noah noticed Shinji Tong's arrival in advance, and because Rin Enbin was immersed in his own world, he didn't notice that Noah had stopped. At this time, Noah was still a bit away from Rin Enbin. Shinji Tong, who only had eyes for Rin Enbin, didn't notice that Noah, who made him lose face last time, wasn't far away. He also didn't notice Rin Enbin's polite smile as if he was facing a stranger. He kept walking back and forth in front of Rin Enbin. "Well, don't be so polite, just call me by my name. How about I call you by your name?" Seeing Shinji Tong taking advantage of the situation, Rin Enbin was both amused and angry. "No need, Shinji Tong, we're not familiar enough to call each other by name. It's better to be polite here." What he meant was that Tong Shinji's actions had already reached the point of being rude and unsightly. However, Shinji Tong didn't realize the meaning of Rin Enbin's words at all, and he was still proud. "Don't say that, Enbin. Since you came so much earlier than usual, there must be something you can do at this time, right?" Shinji Tong smiled as if he had seen through everything. He even reached out his hand and was about to put his arm around Rin Enbin's shoulder. For example, to have a good relationship with a boy who needs to participate in club activities and will come to school early. When these words came out, even Rin Enbin, who felt that she needed to maintain the elegance and politeness of a daughter in front of a rotten person, closed her eyes, and the smile on her face slowly disappeared. And this behavior, in Shinji Tong's eyes, meant that Rin Enbin had acquiesced to his words and actions, which made him happy and proud, and he immediately planned to put his arm around Rin Enbin's shoulder. Unfortunately, just when Shinji Tong was about to put his arm around Rin Enbin's shoulder, Rin Enbin opened his eyes, and his face and eyes became emotionless, as if he had given up on something. He turned around and directly avoided Shinji Tong's hand. I'm really convinced. There's someone who doesn't understand what I mean. There should be a degree of self-consciousness, idiot. Rin Enbin's avoidance and suddenly quite ruthless words made Shinji Tong stunned, and he was even at a loss. What? You still don't understand? Rin Enbin once again showed an elegant smile, but his words became nasty. I have no interest in you, do you understand? Chapter 732. I'm not interested in you at all. Do you understand? Rin Enosaka's merciless words made Shinji Tamatsuki stunned. When he reacted, his face turned red and he forced a smile. What are you talking about? Even if you deliberately hide it now, it's useless. If you obediently admit it, I can still give you some love. Tamatsuki classmate, it's fine if you don't understand words that are too profound, but please don't not understand what others say directly. You're not an ape. Rin Enosaka tilted her head. That action was quite cute, but the mercilessness in her words had already reached a limit. I don't know why you would have such an overconscious thought to think that I would have feelings for you, but I can clearly tell you that you misunderstood. No matter how I think about it, there's nothing about you that I would like. Enosaka, do. Shinji Tamatsuki's face turned green and white. It seemed that Rin Enosaka's words poked at his pride and face. Noah, who was not far away, originally thought that Shinji Tamatsuki was just teasing Rin Enosaka, but when he saw Shinji Tamatsuki's reaction, he was stunned. Shinji Tamatsuki, did he really think that Rin Enosaka came to school early in the morning for him? In this world, there was actually someone who was so self-conscious that he thought that a girl came to school early in the morning for him? Wasn't this a bit too funny? Noah had to admit that Shinji Tamatsuki's appearance was indeed a bit handsome. However, with that personality and character, to be honest, a real good woman would not like him. Whether or not Rin Enosaka was a good woman, Noah temporarily reserved his opinion on this point. But in terms of appearance and family background, Rin Enosaka was indeed impeccable. Then, would such a girl like her be interested in such a self-conscious and extremely self-righteous man? The answer, of course, was no. If you still don't understand, then it seems that I have to use my actions to prove it. Rin Enosaka seemed to be disgusted by Shinji Tamatsuki's overconscious behavior. Seeing Shinji Tamatsuki's face turn green and white, she did not intend to stop. She looked around and when she saw Noah standing not far away, she waved at Noah. Noah suddenly froze. What was she planning to do? And when Rin Enosaka waved her hand, Shinji Tamatsuki also noticed Noah. When he recognized Noah, his eyes widened and even his voice became sharp. It's you. Seeing this, Noah, who knew that he couldn't stay out of this, pursed his lips and walked forward. What's wrong? Rin Enbin asked Noah, who had walked up to him. Do you know him? No, rather than saying that I know him, it's better to say that I just found out his name. Noah glanced at Shinji Tamatsuki and said lightly. Not long ago, this guy was making trouble on the street. He lost his temper in front of Sakura for no reason. I taught him a lesson. It's really you. Thinking of the humiliation, Shinji Tamatsuki's face twisted. You dare to appear in front of me? Hearing this, Noah really wanted to laugh. Undoubtedly, he ran away because he was scared. Now, what did Shinji Tamatsuki rely on to say this in front of Noah? Sure enough, you're a rotten person. Rin Enosaka's eyes flashed with disgust, but in the next moment, she smiled. At that moment, Rin Enosaka actually did something in front of Shinji Mitsuki, which made Noah somewhat stunned. Rin Enosaka suddenly reached out her hand and hugged Noah's arm. She put her head on Noah's shoulder. Shinji Tamatsuki looked like he saw something unbelievable. He took 2 steps back and pointed at Rin Enosaka with a trembling finger. Enosaka, what are you doing? Shinji Tamatsuki's question was like being betrayed by his lover. But Rin Enosaka had nothing to do with Shinji Tamatsuki. In other words, Shinji Tamatsuki took Rin Enosaka as his own. That's what happened. I say, Tamatsuki, let me explain it to you one by one, okay? Rin and Osaka hugged Noah tightly and said to Shinji Tamatsuki with a sweet smile on her face. In terms of appearance, you're not as outstanding as Noah. In terms of temperament, you can't even compare to a single strand of Noah's hair. In terms of ability, personality, and character, you're so weak that even I feel pity for you. With such a person who's many times better than you by my side, would you still think that I'm interested in you? Tamatsuki Shinji Tamatsuki's face darkened. By the way, yesterday, Noah took me to a ball. It was an upper-class ball hosted by a famous jeweler. There, not only did I wear a dress that you can't afford in your lifetime, but I also met a lot of people that you can't reach in your lifetime. And those people are all Noah's acquaintances. Rin and Osaka didn't leave any face for Shinji Tamatsuki. She hugged Noah's arm and looked at Shinji Tamatsuki. So, know your place, self-righteous guy. Don't bother me again. I'm afraid my Noah will be angry with me. Leaving these words, Rin and Osaka hugged Noah's arm and walked intimately into the school under Noah's speechless and helpless expression. Shinji Tamatsuki just stood there. His expression became extremely ferocious because of the anger in his heart and another emotion. Noah didn't know that Rin and Osaka, who was very unreliable in front of him and would even drop the chain at the crucial moment, was actually the eldest daughter of Suechuan Academy. Because House en Osaka was an ancient magic family. For generations, they held the idea that words and deeds should be elegant in accordance with their status. Therefore, Rin and Osaka could be said to be a well-behaved eldest daughter of a noble family. Appearance was outstanding. Conduct was dignified. Behavior was elegant. Grades were excellent. She was the perfect school flower that everyone recognized. This was Rin and Osaka's identity in Suechuan Academy. Because of this, in the school, many men naturally secretly yearned for Rin and Osaka. Shinji Tamatsuki was one of them. Now, the person he fancied announced in front of him that she belonged to another man? How could Shinji Tamatsuki endure this? In addition, this person was the one who made Shinji Tamatsuki lose face in front of everyone. After that, he was criticized and made fun of by many people in the school. How could Shinji Tamatsuki endure the tumbling emotions in his heart? In addition to endless anger, Shinji Tamatsuki's heart was also filled with monstrous jealousy. Bastard! Who would recognize a man who crawled out of nowhere? Shinji Tamatsuki fiercely turned around and looked at Rin and Osaka, who was hugging Noah's arm intimately. Shinji Tamatsuki looked at the man and woman with eyes full of resentment. Bastard! 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 After a series of ugly venting, Shinji Tamatsuki thought of something and suddenly laughed. His laugh was unusually cruel. In that case, don't blame me, Osaka. If you want to blame someone, blame yourself for not looking at a man. On the other side, Noah, who was tightly hugged by Rin and Osaka, said in a bored tone, "You actually used me as a shield? Rather than a shield, it's better to say that I just want to make that guy understand his own worth." Rin and Osaka said without care. To be honest, that guy has been like this for a long time. Today, I'm in a bad mood, and I'm too lazy to continue playing the good student game with him. Even if you're not here, I'll let him know how much he's worth. While saying this, Rin and Osaka didn't let go of Noah's hand. Instead, he looked at Noah with a devilish smile. "What? Are you shy?" Noah naturally wouldn't blush because of Rin and Osaka's intimate action. He was no longer the ignorant person he used to be. That guy is also from the Mitsuki family, right? Yes. Rin and Osaka answered without thinking. But as a member of the Mitsuki family, the magic circuit in his body has basically dried up. He can no longer be a magician. Hearing this, Noah began to think. Chapter 733. It was the source of magic that all magicians were born with. This was the magic circuit. It was the simulated nerves in the magician's body, and it was also the individual qualification of a magician. It could transform the magician's life force into magic, and it was closely connected to the magic base plate, so that the magician could perform man-made miracles, that is, magic. In other words, the magic circuit was the most fundamental proof of a magician. Only with the magic circuit could one have magic, perform magic, and become a magician. On the other hand, the magic circuit was something that had been decided since birth. Whether it was its existence, quantity, or quality, it would not be increased by external factors, because it was a very rare thing to begin with. Therefore, in order to be able to pass down the magic of their family and let their descendants inherit their research, in an attempt to one day reach the origin, usually, several generations of bloodline accumulation would be carried out, so that the descendants born would have a body that was more suitable for magic. If the existence of magicians was combined with each other, then the probability of the descendants having the magic circuit was very high, and some excellent ones could even have a good magic circuit, laying a huge foundation for themselves to become excellent magicians. Therefore, in the magic world, in order to be able to give birth to excellent descendants with the magic circuit, families that went overboard were simply doing breed improvement just to increase the magic circuit of the children born. Of course, there were also some exceptions who mutated the magic circuit from ordinary people's families, and that was a special case among special cases. Naturally, since there were examples of magician families being able to produce more outstanding offspring than the previous generation, and there were also examples of magicians mutating from ordinary families, then there were gradually declining magic families, and their aptitude as magicians became lower and lower, until finally there were no magician families at all. The Inter-Tong family was such an existence. In today's Tong family, Shinji's magic circuit is basically exhausted, and he can't even open it, so he can't be called a magician at all. Rin Enbin's tone became a little complicated. As for Xiaoying, that child has pretty good talent as a magician, but for some reason, she doesn't seem to have inherited the magic of the Tong family. If she can't even feel magic, it's useless no matter how good her talent is. In other words, if there is a master in the Mesotome family, it would either be Sakura or Shinji Mesotome. Noah asked, "Which one do you think is more likely?" "I don't think either of them is possible," Rin and Osaka replied. Sakura basically doesn't have any magic power, and Shensi has even exhausted his magic circuit. If these two people can be chosen by the Holy Grail, then I have overestimated the threshold of the Holy Grail War. That being said, Rin and Osaka's words were convincing, but there were also some parts that he didn't seem to want to admit. No matter what, my goal is to obtain victory in this Holy Grail War. Even though his expression was complicated, Rin Enbin's eyes were filled with determination. Even if Sakura really becomes master, I will beat her without mercy. Rin and Osaka's words were quite resolute. It was just like how Ayoko had declared in front of Noah that she would definitely take care of her sister. This also made Noah realize the relationship between Rin and Osaka and Mesotome Sakura was definitely not as simple as it seemed. Just as Noah and Rin and Osaka fell into silence, a voice full of surprise and uncertainty came from behind Noah and Rin and Osaka. "No-san? Tenosaka-senpai?" Hearing this voice, both Noah and Rin and Osaka were shocked. They turned their heads and looked at the source of the voice. Noah and Rin and Osaka saw the person they had been talking about since early in the morning. At this time, Mesotome Sakura was standing in front of the door of a Japanese-styled building. She maintained the posture of opening the door and looked at Noah and Rin and Osaka with surprise and astonishment. The reason was naturally because Rin and Osaka was tightly hugging Noah's arm and snuggling into Noah's embrace. That, you guys. Looking at Mesotome Sakura's stuttering appearance, Noah and Rin and Osaka followed her gaze and looked at themselves. Then they finally realized the situation they were in. At this moment, Noah sighed. Rin and Osaka seemed to have been electrocuted. She suddenly let go of Noah's arm and her face was slightly flushed. She quickly said to Mesotome Sakura, "No, it's not what you think." "Sakura, it's not what you think? Then what is it?" From an outsider's point of view, Rin and Osaka's panic and explanation looked like she was trying to hide something. Mesotome Sakura's expression became more and more awkward. However, this gentle girl still spoke out to comfort her. "Tenosaka-senpai, please calm down first. I didn't misunderstand anything, please don't worry." After saying that, Mesotome Sakura stuttered again. It's just that Tenisaka-senpai, who used to hate Noah-sen, why did you suddenly change your attitude? If possible, can you tell me? After Mesotome Sakura said that, Noah and Rin and Osaka finally realized. Rin and Osaka, who used to dislike Noah, and Noah, who didn't like Rin and Osaka, didn't know when it started, but they were able to stand side by side like today. They didn't regard each other as outsiders at all, and they even touched each other. Rin and Osaka seemed like she wanted to explain something, but was interrupted by Noah's sigh. In this situation, the more you explain, the more chaotic it will be. You better shut up. Rin and Osaka was immediately speechless. After a while, Rin and Osaka coughed and pretended to look at Mesotome Sakura seriously. Sakura, Noah is looking for you today. Mesotome Sakura was stunned. Looking for me? That's right, I'm just leading the way. Rin and Osaka brushed her hair, turned around, and waved her hand as if her mission was completed. Then, Sakura, I'll leave this guy to you, I'll go to the classroom first. After saying that, Rin and Osaka left without permission. Mesotome Sakura reached out her hand to Rin and Osaka's direction, but that hand could only hang in the air as if it was frozen there. Watching Rin and Osaka leave, Mesotome Sakura looked at Noah with a confused expression. No-san, looking at the confused look on Tanjing's face, Noah smiled bitterly. But soon he smiled again. I'm just curious about what you usually do in this school, Xiaoying. Is that so? Mesotome Sakura finally reacted. Her expression seemed to be suddenly enlightened, and she couldn't help but smile. I'm very happy that Noah-san came. Hearing that, Noah fixed his gaze on Mesotome Sakura's smiling face and smiled as well. I'm also very happy to see Sakura smile. That was the truth. From the first time they met until now, this young girl who had always acted inferior and passive in front of Noah was finally willing to openly smile. Mesotome Sakura quickly lowered her head and shyly covered her face, then said to Noah rather clumsily, Would Mr. Noah like to come in and take a look at the archery department? Is that okay? Noah hesitated. I won't disturb you, right? No, there aren't many people here at this time of the year. Mesotome Sakura seemed to be a little hesitant, and even her tone had become a little unconfident. So, it shouldn't be a problem, right? Seeing that Mesotome Sakura was doubting his words, Noah couldn't help but laugh. Then take a look around. If there's anything inconvenient, remember to tell me. Mesotome Sakura nodded repeatedly, then opened the door a little embarrassedly and welcomed Noah into the archery department. Before entering the archery department, Noah discreetly sized up Mesotome Sakura's body, especially the back of her hand. If Mesotome Sakura was the master, then there should be a command incantation somewhere on her body. As long as the command incantation was found, it would prove that Mesotome Sakura was the master. Unfortunately, Mesotome Sakura was dressed in archery attire today, and she was also wearing protective gear and gloves on her hands. Noah couldn't see the back of her hand at all. Left with no choice, Noah could only choose to observe the situation first. In fact, whether or not Mesotome Sakura was the master wasn't something that Noah really cared about. What Noah really cared about was what the handsome blonde man said that night. Chapter 734. Under Tanjing's lead, Noah entered the archery department of Sui Kun Yuan Academy and arrived at an extremely spacious venue. It was a spacious venue with a wooden floor. Shelves were placed around it, and the space in the middle was completely empty. In front of them was an open-air grassland with walls on both sides. The walls continued until they were more than 10 meters away from the end point. This was naturally the place to practice archery. At the front of the spacious wooden floor near the open-air grassland was a place for the members of the archery department to aim. In front of the walls at the end of the open-air grassland, there were targets. Just as Tanjing had said, perhaps it was because it was too early, but there was no one in the archery department. The commander left after I arrived. Tanjing, who welcomed Noah in, said to Noah in her usual soft voice. So, we are the only ones here now. Perhaps because she felt that her words were full of ambiguity, Tanjing blushed and quickly changed the topic. Mr. Noah, have you learned archery before? Just call me Noah. I'm not used to calling me Mr. Noah all the time. Noah shook his head and looked at the targets in front of him. I haven't learned archery before, but I've dabbled in shooting before. Shooting? Tanjing didn't expect Noah to suddenly say such a word, so she couldn't react in time. Do you mean the kind of gun? What? You don't believe me? Noah said to Tanjing with a half-smile. Don't look at me like that, I'm quite accurate with my shooting. To be precise, with the help of his sensory ability, Noah couldn't shoot accurately even if he wanted to. It was like turning on a radar to scan the surroundings. For shooting, it was too obvious that he could use his sensory ability to assist him. Noah didn't even need to aim deliberately. He just needed to follow the feedback from his sensory ability, set up his gun in front of the target, and pull the trigger. That was all he needed to do. Therefore, Noah's shooting could not be said to be accurate at all. It should be said to be cheating. Without the assistance of his sensory abilities, Noah's shooting would probably not be as good as those who had specially trained for this. Then, do you want to give it a try? Jian Tanjing suggested. If you have a foundation in shooting, then you should be able to use a good bow. As she spoke, Tanjing did not even give Noah time to respond. She went to the side of the bow rack, took down a wooden peach bow, and then pulled out a few arrows from the side. She cutely held them in front of her and came to Noah with a shy smile on her face. If you are interested, I can teach you how to draw a bow. In the eyes of the layman, the so-called bow and arrow was as simple as setting up the bow, knocking an arrow, aiming, and shooting. However, real archery, as long as the posture is a little wrong, it will affect the accuracy of shooting. The strength of the bow is also particular. It is not just blindly pulling the string to the full and shooting it out. The strength is too big and too small, which will also affect the final accuracy. Therefore, drawing a bow and arrow is a knowledge, even if it is not as good as sniper rifles, which need to confirm various atmospheres and wind directions. There are many things to pay attention to. Noah, who understood this, was more or less interested. If it won't cause you trouble, it doesn't matter if you try it a little. No, how could it? Jian Tanjing shook her head and immediately seemed to be happy to give the bow and arrow in her hand to Noah. Please pay attention to your safety. Jian Tanjing seems to like archery very much. She is sincerely happy to be able to teach others how to use a bow. Noah naturally will not pour cold water on Jian Tanjing. Under the gentle whisper of Jian Tanjing, after learning the basic posture and arrow skills, he turned his head and once again looked at the target in front of the wall at the end of the open-air grassland. Frankly speaking, that distance is only moderate for ordinary people. However, for Noah, who has been strengthened by the protozoan virus, such as vision, night vision, and so on, that can only be regarded as a very close distance. At this distance, even without the assistance of the sensory ability, Noah is confident that he can hit the bullseye. So, Noah simply added a little difficulty. Of course, it is only a little difficulty for Noah himself. In the midst of Tanjing's somewhat confused expression, Noah took out another 4 arrows from the quiver next to him, and together with the arrows that had been placed on the bow from the beginning, all 5 arrows were placed on the bow, and the tail end was directly pieced together. Pinching it with his fingers, he slowly pulled it together with the bowstring. Ah! Jian Tanjing seemed to realize what Noah was going to do and made a small exclamation. However, this small exclamation was also blocked out of Noah's ears. He set the bow, aimed at the front, and closed his eyes at an angle that even Jian Tanjing could not see. His perception force was like mental energy, spreading out in all directions like a net. It did not take long for Noah's sensory ability to feed back the position of the targets in the most direct way to Noah's mind. Moreover, it was not just one target, but 5 targets. Following the feedback of the information from his sensory ability, Noah calmly adjusted the position of the 5 arrows on the bow, and the adjustment was completed in a short moment. In the next moment, Noah suddenly opened his eyes, and the hand that was tightly holding the end of the arrows and the bowstring suddenly loosened. Whoosh 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 whoosh. With the rebounding bowstring as the propulsion force, the 5 arrows each cut through the air and shot forward amidst the faint sharp sound of breaking through the air. Thump, 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 thump. In an instant, the sound of the arrows hitting the targets rang out, echoing in the empty archery department apart from Noah and Jian Tanjing. Looking at the scene in front of her, Jian Tanjing seemed to be doubting her own eyes. She blinked cutely, and then couldn't help but open her mouth. If it wasn't for the girl's reservedness that made Jian Tanjing cover her mouth with her hand when she opened it, Jian Tanjing would have exclaimed out loud by now. It couldn't be helped. As a member of the archery department, the scene in front of her was a little too shocking. With Noah, who had released the bowstring, maintained the arrow, and raised his hand behind him, the 5 closest targets in front of him, which should have been empty, were all pierced with arrows. 5 arrows hit 5 targets. Moreover, all of them hit the bullseye. If the arrows were shot in 5 separate shots, and all 5 shots hit the bullseye, then Jian Tanjing wouldn't be so surprised. However, if the 5 arrows were shot by the same person with the same bow at the same time, then it was a different story. Jian Tanjing could only find one word to describe the scene in front of her. So amazing. Hearing Jian Tanjing's voice, Noah smiled slightly. I told you, I'm still a little confident in shooting, right? Although he had used a method that was close to cheating. Amazing. It's really amazing. Only then did Jian Tanjing react. She moved closer to Noah and said with surprise and excitement, "This is the first time I've seen shooting like this. It's really amazing." Seeing Jian Tanjing's unprecedented enthusiasm, Noah was subconsciously forced to take a step back by this gentle girl's aura. It's just a little stubborn of a layman." Hearing that, Jian Tanjing shook her head vigorously. "The shooting just now was perfect. Your posture was also very standard. Most importantly, your hand didn't even tremble when you used the bow for the first time. When you released the bowstring, you were very steady when you released the arrow. Also, your accuracy and technique are things that even our chief commander can't do." Rather than saying that even the chief commander of the archery department couldn't do it, it would be better to say that almost no ordinary person could do it. Jian Tanjing did have a special fondness for archery. She seemed to be very touched by Noah's cheat-like shooting, which made Noah a little regretful that he overdid it. At this moment, Noah suddenly felt a sharp gaze piercing his back, causing him to narrow his eyes and turn his head around. What he saw was the empty archery department's main entrance. However, Noah didn't think that his intuition was wrong. Someone was watching him. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.